Welcome to the Fairfield Public Schools Board of Education meeting for April 25th, 2023. Thank you all for being here. First, we have call to order of the regular meeting of the Board of Education. With us this evening is Mrs. Vitale, Mrs. Gerber, Mrs. Guernsey, Mrs. Jacobson, Mrs. Maxon-Kennelly, Mr. Peterson, and Mrs. Kelly, and of course, Superintendent Mr. Testani. If everyone would join me in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Okay, first up on our agenda this evening are our student reports. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Good evening. First off, I would just like to say how grateful I am on behalf of my fellow students and staff at Walter Fitzgerald for having us at this meeting. We're very excited to share all the great things that we do at our school. And unfortunately, my classmate Naz was out sick today, but he really wanted to be here too. As you may be aware, at Walter Fitzgerald, we incorporate project-based learning into our curriculum, and this year we have had some very exciting projects spanning multiple subject areas. Our Civics and Science of the Cosmos classes have been planning an outdoor classroom and a pollinator garden space. Our students are planting 2 different gardens, one for native pollinator plants and one for edible plants such as lettuce, herbs, and radishes. We hope to incorporate our food grown in the garden into our lunches, as our food service has been an ongoing issue. Through this work, we even established a mentorship program with Geraldine Clater Magnet School in Bridgeport. Our students took a field trip to their school and helped them plant seeds to start their own garden. We will be returning for 4 more times before the end of the school year, and our second trip is tomorrow. In biology and forensics, our students borrowed materials from Jackson Labs to learn biotechnology lab skills, including micropipetting, making a gel electrophoresis, and analyzing fingerprints. Currently, our students are creating resumes with their skills. Our forensic students just started a podcast, and our first guest was the school resource officer, Tiffany Bennett, who was asked a bunch of questions relating to what she sees in her work and how that relates to our forensics curriculum. We continue to maintain our beehives, which were established last spring. Our bio students are creating a manual and a calendar for bee care, and our environmental chem students used honey from the bees to make soap. We have a representative from the Pollinator Pathways coming in May to help our new students learn how to care for the bees now that it's getting warmer out. In psych, our students created a mood meter for students and staff to employ in order to cultivate emotional intelligence. They researched the importance of understanding and processing our emotions and then presented this information to the school. Each day, students and staff check in on the mood meter as one way of acknowledging their emotions. In English, in addition to our regular reading and writing, we've been developing responses to deeper moral and philosophical questions, which has led to explorative discussions and debate. Our students benefit from a more intimate classroom environment and are very open to sharing their ideas with their peers. Additionally, we've been diligently working and learning from each other on sharing our cultures. Throughout the year, we have had several presentations and celebrations. In February, we celebrated Black History Month with a variety of guest speakers presenting. We learned about how different Black cultures celebrate and about different types of cuisine. In March, we celebrated Women's History Month. Each U.S. history student researched a woman who inspired them, and we had a presentation to the rest of our students. Most recently, we celebrated the end of Ramadan with our own Eid celebration and a presentation from 2 of our students who completed their month-long fasting. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Aniket, and I'm your only representative from Ludlow today. Last Thursday, representatives from the Army, Navy, Air National Guard, Marine Corps, and Coast Guard visited all lunch waves to meet with students at Ludlow. They discussed recruitment options and our OTC programs. Their little trinkets and merch were very popular. Ludlow's Drama Club has been working hard to put on their showing of Rent, the musical, this weekend. Tickets are available online and at the door, and we really encourage all members of the community to join us in celebrating their talent and hard work. Flagman, a new public service foundation, came to Ludlow last week on Monday and Tuesday to present about roadside safety for first responders. This is a new organization, and the founder is a Fairfield native and a Roger Ludlow High School alumnus whose brother was killed, unfortunately, in an accident on the roadside 3 years ago. We are honored to have been selected as their launch school, and we're excited to watch as they grow in the future with more funding from the state in particular. The American Cancer Society on campus is running their annual Paint the School Purple campaign to support the Relay for Life event coming up in June. In some lighter news, on March 30th, Ludlow held the celebrated Battle of the Houses, where the halls were decked in house colors and students participated in a whole plethora of athletic competitions. For the first time in years, Warner House won, ending a string of like 5 years of Wright House domination, and there were ridiculous celebrations in the hallways after. Also on March 30th, Ludlow was fortunate to host Dr. William Kalin. Dr. Kalin is a 1975 alumnus of Roger Ludlow High School and won the 2019 Nobel Prize in Medicine. It was a pleasure to learn about his story and interact with him and his suggestions for us. Last week, in honor of Holocaust Remembrance Day, the Jewish Culture Club invited Mr. Eugene Ginter, a Auschwitz survivor, to speak with members of the Ludlow community. The auditorium was absolutely jam-packed with students, and we really enjoyed hosting Mr. Ginter. His story was memorable and very touching, and a critical reminder for why we study history. And last, I'd like to shout out the Ludlow Model UN team. They've been busy at the high school Model UN circuit, most recently attending Dartmouth Model UN conference. And specifically, I'd like to congratulate Junior Grace Coyne for winning Outstanding Delegate and Senior Aniket Martins for winning Best Delegate. That's all from Ludlow for this week, and thank you guys.
Thank you both so much for your reports. Any questions by board members? Mrs. Vitale.
Zoe, it's a little bit late, but on behalf of the board, we received the beeswax soap around the holidays. So thank you, and please just tell your teachers and fellow classmates that we appreciated the gesture, and it was really exciting to be recognized in that way. And a lot of exciting things going on there, and maybe we could get a visit soon.
Yeah, we would definitely love to have you take a tour.
Awesome, great. Anyone else? No? Okay. Well, thank you both for being here and sharing all of your exciting news. And you are welcome to stay as always, but if not, you can be on your way. And if any of our friends from Ward do come, I will be sure to circle back to them. Sorry. Oh, sorry, Christine. Yep, Mrs.
Are we sure that they knew about the 7 o'clock start?
I am not sure about that. So hence, should they join us, I will afford them the opportunity to give their report as well. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for being here. Okay. Next up is public comment. So if there's anyone from the audience who would like to give public comment on any of our agenda items this evening, you may come forward at this time. Okay. Next on our agenda is the recognition of excellence of our Odyssey of the Mind teams from Burr and Ward, which we are super excited to have all of you here. I'm going to have Mr. Testani, your superintendent, give a little brief introduction, and then Mrs. Maxon Kennelly will walk us through the presentation.
Thank you. Excuse me. Tonight we have the pleasure of recognizing the accomplishments of 3 Fairfield Odyssey of the Mind teams who earned the opportunity to compete in Worlds at Michigan State University over the Memorial Day weekend. Earning this recognition took months of planning, creating, practicing, and commitment that will truly serve these students well for building habits that will impact their approach to both school and life. Like so many programs offered through our school PTAs, we must applaud the work of both the students and the parent coaches who saw the value of this program and went on this crazy journey together. I now turn it over to Fairfield Board of Ed member and unofficial Odyssey of the Mind ambassador and head cheerleader, Jennifer Maxon Kennelly, to recognize the individual work of each team. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Testani. And congratulations to those team members who are here. We did have additional teams in Fairfield that competed as well, and I can only hope that this program starts to grow again and get back to its pre-COVID numbers, where Fairfield had the most teams competing in Connecticut in the entire state. We're working on it. So first up, I'd like to recognize, both of the Burr teams had 5th graders on it, and the first one I'd like to recognize is the team that competed in the technical category with this year's problem titled Because I Can. This team was made up of 6 Burr 5th graders who were all first-timers to OM. In their problem, they needed to create a contraption that would cause a series of events to unfold like a Rube Goldberg machine. In this case, the team created a contraption, so try to use your imagination here, to protect the fictional Clappy Lab, I hope I'm saying that right, it was hard to tell if it was an L or an I. When a would-be robber comes to steal the newest Clapple phone, he sets off the contraption leading to his own capture. Here's where your imagination comes in a foam, noodle, and cardboard jail. The contraption involved rolling marbles, falling bells, rising balloons, pulleys, strings, weights, tape, and a Swiffer, setting off signals and alarms as well as releasing the jail. Meanwhile, the students acted out the scene as Clapple inventors, robbers, and police with costumes, props, dialogue, and even a dramatic death, all in 8 minutes. So this all-rookie Burr team placed second in Division I and earned the opportunity to compete at Worlds. At this time, I'd like to recognize those team members and their coach, and if you could come up here into the middle to stand for a photo, which we can then post for the district website. Our team members were Matteo Delan, Anthony DeMeglio, E.J. Ronan, Thomas Silva, Shane Stern, and Jackson Wormley, and coached by parent Darcy Ronan. Our second team, also from Burr, also a group of fifth graders. This team, who did my favorite classics problem, the team was challenged to put a spin on the concept of the Trojan horse, creating a wall for the horse to get through and a conflict between two groups of people. At the time, the fifth graders were studying about the Plymouth colonists in social studies and decided that would be the group that would go to war with the Greeks. The setting was the first Thanksgiving, and the Trojan horse was a huge corn stalk with a Greek god hiding in it. Once he crossed over the wall, he poisoned the colonists' food, which killed off the remaining colonists, leading the Greeks to victory. And that was our second problem. So this team, again, finished in second place in the Connecticut competition, earning their trip to Michigan State University to compete in Worlds. These young students are Jessica Sweeney, Victoria Horn, Julia Aaron, Luke Abbott-Walker, Logan Schmucker, Shrey Bendari, and coached by Carrie Sweeney and Jennifer Abbott-Walker. And we got some costumes on this one. And finally, these fifth grade teams could aspire to be like our final team. This is our group of ninth graders from Ward. They chose the performance problem, also known as Problem 5, and the problem was called the most dramatic problem ever. I can't even imagine. Their solution was centered in medieval times, with the idea that a king and a peasant would switch places to prevent a revolution in the kingdom. Their king character had to react dramatically to everyday problems, which this team chose to focus on walking instead of carriage rides, gruel instead of food fit for a king, love this last one, and paying taxes instead of benefiting from them. The solution culminated in a song and dance number that the judges particularly enjoyed. For this team, this is their 6th year doing Odyssey of the Mind. They have made world finals 3 times, once in elementary school, once in middle school, and this time in high school. And while they claim that this is their swan song, I can only hope they change their minds. So if we can now recognize this roster of committed Odyssey students, Jack Anahori, Carlo Desi, Henry Quinn, Anshul Sinha, Anshika Sinha, and Vaden Thacker. If you could please come up. And they're coached by Karen Anahari. And a thank you to the board for giving them this opportunity for recognition. Many of you up here are experienced OMers yourselves. You know the commitment that these children and their families put into this program, and this is just such a well worthwhile recognition, and thank you for coming out tonight.
Thank you, Mrs. Maxon-Kennelly, and we wish you all the best of luck and success in Michigan. Please let us know how it goes. We would love to hear how everyone does. So well wishes on your journey, and congratulations to you all. All right, next up we have a curriculum status update, Family Consumer Science, Dr. Javajancic. Is that right?
Good evening, everybody. James Zavajancic, Chief Academic Officer, and tonight I'd like to welcome Miss Rachel Kelleher, a teacher at Fairfield Ward High School, but also our curriculum coordinator for Family and Consumer Sciences, who will soon give you a status update on the approved curriculum about 5 years in at this point. Within there will be highlights of curriculum implementation and also changes of implementation from when it was presented to the board for approval 5 years ago. We will have a question and answer session at the end if there are any questions about the curriculum. And Ms. Kelleher will introduce her colleagues as well, who will be joining her in this presentation. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Rachel Kelleher, and as James mentioned, I am the child development teacher at Fairfield Ward High School and also the liaison for the town of Fairfield for Family and Consumer Sciences. I have with me Donna Huber, who is the fashion teacher from Fairfield Ludlow High School, and Vicki Hastings, who is the child development teacher from Fairfield Ludlow High School. In addition, between the three of us, we've also taught foods and worked at the middle school. So we have a fairly comprehensive knowledge of the program. I will be providing a brief overview of what we've learned and subsequent changes we have made to implementation since the Family and Consumer Sciences curriculum was approved by the board in 2017. Can you push the button for me so I don't have any hands? Thank you. As you can see by the numbers, we are a thriving department offering a variety of courses to meet the needs of our diverse body of students, whether they are focused on life skills or participating in a career pathway with a view to post-secondary education. Family and Consumer Sciences comprises of 3 areas. The first is fashion business, fashion design, and interior design. Introductory courses are offered in middle school, with the more advanced classes building on these skills. To meet the needs of all students and using strategies learned during remote teaching, teachers have created support videos and resources allowing students to follow up independently from teacher instruction. This has allowed us to implement our curriculum with more differentiation and allowing students to work at their own pace. To ensure students are current with industry standards, we have initiated electronic payments for use at the annual Fashion Industry Strategies Boutique. The boutique is an opportunity for students to learn about purchasing wholesale, selling retail, and creating a profit for the business. In keeping with environmental concerns, sustainability has become a greater focus in all textile courses since the curriculum was written in 2017. Introductory food classes are offered in middle school, providing a foundation for high school. In high school, students are able to focus on foods as a life skill or as a career pathway to post-secondary opportunities. We are excited to share that we have developed an articulation agreement with Norwalk Community College to enable students to earn credits while still in high school. Providing more opportunities for student agency has been a big change in implementing the curriculum. As shown here, Fairfield Ludlow High School food service students created a tasting menu to demonstrate culinary skills while celebrating a partnership with Whitson's Culinary Group to bring seasonally available, locally sourced produce to Fairfield Public Schools cafeteria. Students are using e-portfolios now, which enables students to demonstrate learning and self-reflection in a variety of ways. As our programs evolve in alignment with current technological advances, and to ensure that students practice skills to align with industry standards, food service students have created Instagram pages to showcase their work and as a marketing social media strategy. Child development courses are offered in 10th through 12th grades. The Child Development 2 course allows students to teach in the preschool with a class of 12 preschool students. The Child Development 3 course is an early college experience course in human development aligned with UConn, with students earning 3 credits for UConn or an affiliated school. District-wide aligned performance-based assessments allow for students to demonstrate their learning in a manner which reflects real-world application. They also provide consistency across schools. A big change that we have made in implementation regards the preschool. This was originally configured into 3s and 4s in separate classes, meeting only 2 times per week. Now we have mixed age classes, meeting 4 days a week, allowing high school students access to both age groups to compare and contrast cognitive and emotional development over the age span. Child development teachers have become active members of the National Association of Education for Young Children, which allows us to providing research, resources, and professional development to ensure the incorporation of developmentally appropriate practices in the preschool curriculum. Family and Consumer Sciences provides a space for students to be accepted, build relationships, and collaborate with students in different grades. Students build life skills and follow career pathways, preparing to be responsible and successful adults. Thank you. I don't know if there are any questions.
Hi, thank you very much for the presentation and for being here this evening. Any questions from board members? Mrs. Gerber.
Hi, thanks very much for this. My daughter took a lot of these courses and really got so much out of them. And she's actually majoring in fashion retail now in college, so she's really, got a lot out of this. I just had a question. This is the enclosure 1B with the enrollments, the course enrollments. I was just curious. It looks like child development. the enrollment went down significantly, but then others have gone up. I just didn't know if that was just kind of more of a scheduling thing, or if there was any kind of rationale behind some courses seem to have jumped up quite a bit and others seem to have declined quite a bit. I didn't know if there was any kind of color to that.
The number of students across all courses is dependent on, students signing up, the number of teachers that we have, and the room space. So whoever, I guess the administrators that do the scheduling kind of determine how to get most students the choice that they want. And so I guess that's how the numbers are worked out.
I just saw that, like interior design, for instance, went up from 35 to 63, and it's just a pretty big jump.
Yeah, I think there's no, if you look back over the last 10 years, I think there are years when certain subjects, strands go up, go down, depends. So, and as I say, I think the bottom line comes down to the people who do the scheduling determine how they can have most students get the courses that they want. So.
Mrs. Guernsey?
Hi, thank you for this presentation, and I really value these courses, and I hear so many wonderful things about them, and I'm just wondering, in terms of the middle school implementation and the changes that you had to make with the schedule that's currently running, if you could just share anything about moving forward, going back to the 5-day rotation, if that helps or hinders, or if it's status quo, I don't know.
So in general, for all of our courses, we do better with obviously a longer time block and rather than the shorter course times. So basically what happens with our courses is with more time, we go for the greater depth. So because then students have more of a time to work on a particular product or item or process. Rather than, if they have the shorter time, you spend more time getting started, finishing up, and there's not much space left in the middle. So for our area, the bigger blocks in the middle school has definitely been a bonus.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Maxon-Kennelly?
Yes, thank you for this. A couple of questions. The first one, I'm not sure to whom to direct this, but looking at, I'm also looking at the enclosure 1B regarding the enrollment. I assume with the food services 1, 2, and 3, those were all run in a single classroom with numbers that low?
Yes, it's a mixed level class. Yes.
And then baking and pastry, is there something to the curriculum that has such low course numbers that that's not reduced? Or was that just a bit of a gift?
I'm not sure what
So
you're
the baking
asking.
and pastry numbers, for example, at Ludlow have the highest enrolled class is 13. The rest of them are mostly 11 and 12 and 8.
Oh, okay. So it depends where the courses are run. So we have two facilities. We have the regular culinary room, and then we have the restaurant kitchen. The restaurant kitchen at Ludlow maxes out at 12, and the culinary at Ludlow maxes out at 16. So that's why.
Makes sense. Thank you so much. And the other two other questions. The first was, as part of this update, and I just want to make sure I didn't miss it, I only heard of one actual change in the 5 years, and that was the approach to preschool, which I think sounds fabulous. But I didn't pull from this that there have been any other changes. Did I miss something?
Well, so some of the for example, the alignment with Housatonic, so that now the students taking food services, they do the ServSafe exam, and then they also are getting credit for Housatonic. We have the allowing students a lot more agency and flexibility and independent learning, something that we really learned from COVID, so that we are now implementing those. So they have actually been quite big changes in all three of our areas. And then a big thing has been with the technology, with getting the electronic payments for the boutique, trying to keep up with the industry standards and technology, and then also using the social media for the marketing for the food services.
I love that. That would sound really cool.
Yeah, so a lot of changes.
Okay, so that makes sense. Thank you so much. And then my last question is that at this point, because I know one thing that can make enrollment a struggle is that as they have to hit these high school graduation requirements. I don't know, again, to whom to direct this, but how many different graduation buckets can some of these courses fill?
So right now, they are only falling into electives, and we are about to gird our loins and fight a battle to get some of them put into other buckets. So for example, some of these courses should be in science, and some should be in social studies, yes. Because that's definitely going to impact the ability of students to choose. We have students coming to us saying, we want to take your courses, but we can't. We're forced to take something else just to fill up the bucket.
Well, cheering you on. So, all right, thank you. No, please, love to add.
All I was going to say is that the ECE course, the Human and Individual Development course, could fall into the social studies really easily. There's already a psychology, social sciences in that realm, so it could very easily be pegged into that arena.
And like Mrs. Gerber, I had a child in the program too, except that she was one of the 4-year-olds, and just a great experience there. So thank you so much for this.
Can I just have a quick follow-up on that? The ECE courses, though, those aren't counting as more than electives. I would imagine that they would, like the lifespan human development that you're getting UConn credit for, that's only counting, wouldn't count as a social humanities bucket, so to speak?
No, all of the courses are just in the electives.
It is an electives credit. I will check the buckets on that for the graduation requirements to see which ones, I just don't have it in front of me, to see if there's another, if it falls into the credit of the bucket as well. It is definitely an elective weight, though.
Okay, all right. Mrs. Kelly.
Hi, just real quick, to follow up on Mrs. Gerber's question. I understand, like, looking at the child development enrollment numbers. If I look at the backup to that on page 3, if I look at child development 1, at least for Ludlow, I don't have the benefit of a year-over-year comparison, but it looks like pretty much everybody who requested it was rostered. So unless I'm missing something, I don't see it as a scheduling issue. So I'm just wondering if there's more story to that, or if there's more story to it being a scheduling issue that doesn't get captured on here.
So one problem with the child development 2, with the preschool program, is that students are required to take a whole period and a lab period. So they're taking one whole and then a mini. So with the changing requirements now, it's much harder for a student to take a course that requires 1.5 as opposed to just one period. With regard to child development 1, as I say, I think it varies year by year, I think is all I can say. James has something.
I can pull the year-over-year data to see if there's a change. You are absolutely correct that it looks like 43 requested and 44 requested and 43 got in, so you are right about that.
Anyone else? Mrs. Vitale.
Can you just tell us a little bit about the restaurants that operate at both of the high schools? Want to, let the public know about it. A few of us had the pleasure of joining you for lunch, and I was surprised that so many people didn't know about it. So I wanted to give you this opportunity to share.
Okay, thank you. So Fairfield Ludlow High School has the Falcon's Nest, and at Ward we have Barlow's, which are the student-run restaurants run by Food Services 1, 2, and 3. And it depends, there's a different schedule for each school. They choose, the students and the teacher work together to decide when they're going to offer lunches, and then other services they provide, which might be a take-home on a Friday, or pick-up-and-go sandwiches, or special foods for the Super Bowl or for a holiday. And so the restaurants put out information, but it just goes out to the school. It doesn't go out beyond that. So when they're putting out food at for the Falcon's Nest, they'll email everybody at Ludlow, and the same with Ward. So you're correct, it doesn't get beyond that. So.
But it's a wonderful experience for the students, and we met some some students that want to go on and be chefs, and were sharing how they were creating their own recipes, and just seeing that type of passion was really just wonderful. So I appreciate being invited, and just wanted to give you that opportunity.
Well, thank you.
So
And-
thank you. And for PTA, we used you for PTA at Ludlow
Yes.
many years ago, and the food is delicious. So
But
as a-
maybe something for them to think about is how to reach a wider community base for their product.
well, I thought about that. You've got PayPal now going and social media.
Okay, anyone else? All right, thank you so much, and I'll just share my gratitude as children have gone through some of these programs as well, and is now tracked into the college level and earn credits, and how that has actually helped their actual schedule there as well. So there's it kind of continues on actually after post-graduation, and appreciating how the new graduation requirements that has started this year may have impacted some of this. So I'll be interested in following up in terms of how we can address some of that going forward. So thank you so much for being here.
Oh, we actually have one teacher here that came through.
Ah! Yep. Okay, next up, third quarter financial report, Mrs. Laborious.
We do have our ward
Oh, sorry.
and
I'm so
Ludlow
sorry.
representatives that have
Hold.
arrived.
Hold, Mrs. Laborious, sorry. We're going to let our fellow students that came give their reports while they're here. Hi, guys. Thank you. Sorry. You guys are aware that a couple of the other students had already reported, right? Okay, you know that. Okay.
Hi, I'm Ida. The Fairfield Ward Drama Club is sponsoring Fiddler on the Roof, with shows taking place Friday, May 5th and Saturday, May 6th at 8 p.m. and Sunday, May 7th at 2 p.m. Our program has worked so hard to put this performance together, and we are excited to see their talent.
Good evening, I'm Mary, and the Library Learning Commons is hosting Wellness Week this week, where students and staff have the opportunity in a host of activities to improve well-being in the stressful time of AP exams. Storytelling, journaling, rock painting, which has been a big hit, music, and movies and meditation are just a few examples provided.
The Ward DECA team is also currently competing at the national competition in Florida. Congratulations.
In the coming month, we are looking forward to Junior Prom, which is Saturday, May 13th, and Senior Prom, which is Friday, May 19th.
Additionally, on Friday, May 12th, we will be collaborating with the Fairfield Police Department, Fire Department, Bridgeport Hospital, and Fairfield Cares to provide our annual mock crash to the junior class. Spectators will witness a simulation of a rescue mission that includes a medical transport, arrest, and a death notification. The goal of this simulation is to prevent drunk driving.
Spring sports are underway, and we want to wish luck to the student athletes as they continue to compete in their events and games.
We would also like to extend our sincere thank you to our teachers and sports staff as they are recognized during Teacher Appreciation Week beginning May 8th.
The Senior Awards Scholarship Night will take place on Thursday, June 8th from 6:30 to 9:30 in the auditorium to honor our hardworking graduating class on all of their achievements throughout high school. Students will be presented with an array of scholarships to put towards their college expenses.
Finally, seniors will have the opportunity to visit their elementary schools and say thank you and goodbye to their former teachers on Friday, June 9th. This is a great opportunity to celebrate and acknowledge how far the seniors have come. Thank you.
So for Ludlow, we have a few, I'd say not so exciting, maybe like, not so good news, neutral. We have the SAT, ACT, and AP exams. I can tell you nobody was looking forward to these. Nobody wanted to do them. It really was a bite the bullet scenario. I have a friend. She took a bunch of AP classes. There will be a lot of tears this week, but we do always have counselors on standby. That's why we actually have a lot of them. They're always available. And we're going to get through that, hopefully. And then we'll have final exams right after that. So it's been a packed time, but you know what they say about junior year. And then we also had the Disney trip for the music program, which is very exciting. It's a way that they used to bribe students in the beginning of their career. I remember when, in middle school, they go there and they tell you, oh, you're going to get to go to Disney. It's going to be great, and that's how they get you roped into it. And then you can't leave because you've already committed too much to it, and your parents already rented out the instrument. Yes. No, the people that are in it love it. Our music program is great. My friend, absolutely, she's going to the play that we're going to have because her teacher is playing in it. That's how much they really do form an awesome bond in there. And then also, that's it, but just to mention about the family consumer science, I personally, in middle school, I took the cooking and the sewing course, and in high school right now, I've taken all 3 child development courses and a cooking course, in the beginning, and I will tell you, I have learned more in my first year of health my first year of child development with Mrs. Huber than I did every single year of health I've ever had in my life. The course was riveting, and anybody who has taken child development, when they do go into health and junior health, you already know so much of the things because of how much you learned in that course. Just unabashedly, telling you about female health especially, the processes that happened, child care. And I will tell you, no amount of learning about birth control will ever contribute to, knowledge as much as having an electronic baby in your room at 4 a.m. screaming. That was traumatic. The shrill cries. I used to think, oh my God, babies are so cute. I want to be a babysitter. Not anymore. Yep. But yeah, that's it.
Well, thank you. I think. No, fabulous, wonderful. So sorry you didn't get the communication that it started earlier, but we're so happy you could be here and join us, and we would love for you to stay. Sure you're looking forward to junior prom and senior prom and some of the other things that weren't mentioned previously, but wish you a great spring, and we'll see you next time in May, and thank you so much for being here. Bye. All right, now third quarterly report, Ms. Laborious. It is hard to follow.
So I'm here for a riveting Q3 update, and that is a hard act to follow, so thank you. So you attached in your Friday packet, you would find the Q3 results. We're following the same trend as we reported in Q2. But I did take feedback from the board and modified the way that we're presenting it slightly. So we're showing in the Q3 results the pre-transfer amounts. So I think it was probably misleading in the Q2 to do the post-transfer to say, okay, we're requesting the transfer and we're showing you the spend out. This is the pre-transfer spend out. So as you know, the board has to authorize any transfers above $10,000 amongst the major class categories. And so as we've been talking to you about in the personnel and fixed charges, we have the surpluses. They still held true of what we talked about earlier in the year, or the balances, I should say, which meant that we had more vacancies than we expected in personnel, and that continued to hold true, what we assumed would happen in terms of the fill rate into the third quarter. And that also impacted our insurances, so as there were some vacancies, we also spent less money on benefits. That in the budget was accounted for, if you recall, because in 2 ways. Number one, we did a deeper dive look at the retirees, because this year some of the surplus in the staffing is due to a larger number of retirees than we expected. And we also, through the board's assistance in the budget, or through the board's initiative in the budget, proposed increasing the paraeducator rate. Ideally, that's going to help us to not just attract, but also retain the paraeducators that we do have. So we thank you for that, and we're hoping to see lower vacancy rates next year as a result. As well as there was a third one, and in the health insurance. We did have a certain assumption in health insurance that we would carry forward in the budget every year, which included a certain number of vacancies that if you look at the year-over-year health insurance budget, you can see that although it's an 8% increase, the actual year-over-year increase is much less because we did reduce the number of vacancies that we were holding in the health insurance budget. So we likely won't be in that same situation next year. But again, Q3 is like Q2, so the balances that you see are the result of those two main factors. We already did do the transfers for the transportation surplus that we spoke about earlier. Again, in the budget, we did, I don't want to say right-size that, but we made some adjustments as a result of new management in transportation and Mr. Papageorge having a year under his belt in transportation. We believe we put forward a good transportation budget next year. This year, unfortunately, we did have driver shortages, which we were able to find additional drivers for the special education buses in January. So that's reflected in your projection. So I'm talking big picture. I didn't walk through the numbers, but I want to pause there and see through the chair, if that's okay, if there are any questions.
Of course. Yes, Mrs. Maxon-Kennelly.
Just one. Regarding the hiring of subs, isn't this kind of a good thing that we have been able to have more subs, which means we're being able to cover more classrooms better? So while this was a higher number than expected, it's educationally for a good reason. I just want to make sure I'm reading it correctly.
That's correct, yes. We do, our fill rate is good, thanks to the staff that's really working diligently at the schools and at central office. So yes, that's correct. Our sub budget, it has been exceeded, so we had to transfer funds from the teaching line to cover that because they're covering for teachers. So I would say if you ask the folks, administrators and teachers that might be in the audience, it's still been a challenge, but we've definitely, I think from what I hear, done better than some of our colleagues at filling substitutes where we need to.
Thank you.
Mr. Peterson.
Hi, thanks. Can I just clarify something about the transfers issue? I do appreciate you backing them out and showing them in a separate column, but if we look at the transfers that are listed in column I, it appears they amount to about $1.54 million. At the end of Q2, I think it was in January, we voted for transfers that were about $1.3 million. So does
Correct.
are we adding $200,000 to proposed transfers before the end of the year?
Correct. This is cumulative, so this is the additional transfers. And yes, we did do about 1.2 back in January. So when we did the surplus needs in January, for example, for personnel, we did show the board that we anticipated having, I apologize, I'm just going to pull that up, about 1.2 million in personnel, of which we only transferred 600K at that time. So we're honoring the tenor that we said to do transfers earlier, not wait until the end of the year. And so this is that second round, but we're still on target with what we thought.
No, I appreciate that. I really just wanted to remove the ambiguities, just because the number in the column I is not what we approved in January.
Correct. And so if at the next board meeting when we do the transfers, I can show the total amount, if that would be helpful, and show that with the public, so as part of the board packet.
I'll have some other questions, but we'll wait till the specific numbers.
Okay. Did you want to go over any particular numbers? Walk through it.
Well, okay, so on the detail page for the personnel services, right now the balance is about $589,000, of which we would be proposing a transfer. And fixed charges, about $700,000, again, on track with what we were projecting earlier. Pupil personnel services, The balance in that category is due to transportation, but right now, what we're projecting in pupil personnel is relatively flat, so only about a 50,000 out of the total budget of 15 million. That said, we did just get a final number for excess cost, or a proposed number for excess cost, and it's roughly about $100,000 less than what we were projecting in the Q3, so that'll be updated, but we will update other numbers as well, so we'll keep the board apprised of that. School expenses, we spend that out. The schools, we've been working with them closely. So we did, if you've heard, recently sweep the accounts so that all the funding is available in one account code, but the schools still have the ability to transfer the money to complete all the rest of the purchasing they need to do for the rest of the year. That's more so that we can assist them in any large purchases that they have, that we can do it sooner rather than wait until the end of the year to do them. Support expenses. We are going to be asking for a transfer, and it's related to a presentation that you'll see this evening related to the CSDE legislation for literacy. And maintenance, operation, and transportation. With maintenance, operation, and with the maintenance budget, as you know, we always have projects in the pipeline, and so we'll be presenting to you in greater detail what those projects that we'd anticipate utilizing some of the funds that we have at our next board meeting. And the same thing for capital. We've spent out most of the capital budget at this point, including the $600,000 transfer for the Chromebooks that we were able to purchase to offset next year's budget request. Okay, and if there are additional questions, I'll pause there.
Mrs. Maxon-Kennelly.
Just one question. At this point in time, is anything in the budget frozen? I mean, usually we do that when we have concerns that something is going way over budget somewhere, so something that the board has approved as an expenditure gets held so that we can make sure that we can make good on the budget at the end. So at this point in time, based on this forecast, is there anything that's frozen?
So not frozen per se, but at the school level, we did sweep the budgets and put them into a single account where they have to request transfers. And again, that's because we're at year end, and the ideal would be that they've purchased everything they need for the rest of the year or encumbered it. So for example, field trips that are happening in May, if an emergency comes up, we still have that money available for them. At the school level, they just have to request the budget transfer. So it's not frozen, but it's swept into a single account so that we don't have $100,000 left at the end of the year that we're doing a flurry of spending at year end. We want to assist the schools to put their purchases in now.
But correct me if I'm wrong, this is kind of unusual. Usually at this point, we are still holding something as frozen to make sure that...
But we have surplus. Yes, we're not...
Asking the question.
Well, right, we would do that if we were at a deficit.
Not always at a deficit. We do it if we're looking at a possible
I do
issue.
think we did change the methodology. I do think that I would say that our staff have been doing a really good job of being tighter and more confident in our projections so we don't have to freeze. And we are fortunate that we have a surplus, but we had, in years past, from my understanding, done freezes even when we were projecting surpluses just to make absolute sure. But, we're working with our colleagues every day. We look at all the contracts. We do it on a daily basis. So we can feel comfortable to not freeze the accounts, because I don't think it's appropriate unless you're in a place where you really have to freeze the accounts because you're truly in a situation with something unanticipated.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Peterson.
I have kind of a specific question. Line 46, commercial gas/heat. It looks like we budgeted 1.6 million for that, and year-to-date through the end of Q3, we have expended $724,000.
Correct.
Kind of implies in a projected additional obligation column that there's $917,000 that we are somehow going to spend on heat between now and the end of Q4. Now, we had a very mild winter, and thank goodness for that, but I don't know why this $917,000 is not part of the transfers. It looks like we're kind of stocking away $920,000 that large portion of it may come to us as surplus.
I'm really glad you brought that up. I mentioned it in the memo, but I didn't in my talk, that the utilities, so not just heat, but all of the utilities, we were a little over budget this year. We right-sized, I believe, the budget for next year. We worked with, so there were a couple factors happening. New purchasing director, war, unpredictable energy prices, and we were out of contract. So for all those reasons, but yes, you're right. Normally, they waited, my predecessor would wait until Q3 to do the utility updates. We didn't want to do that, but because of the unpredictability and because of the really warm weather this year, we did. That said, yes, we did not put that on here partially because we're going to talk about that next week. It doesn't require a transfer because it's within maintenance, but we do have plans for those as part of the maintenance projects. So I didn't mean to be disingenuous with not having that here. It's that it wasn't ready at the time of publication. So
No, but I just, my point about it is it's a large area of potential surplus.
Yes.
A large area of potential surplus. And I get that we may not need to transfer it, but I was surprised to see there was so much still left in the pot.
Yes, yeah, and this is paid out through, as of this report, through some of the heat through through January and some through March. Some of the bills hadn't come in when we ran this on March 31. But that said, yes, there is a surplus in the utilities in general, heat in particular, that we will be talking about at the next board meeting, even though it doesn't require a transfer because we would like to spend it on some of the capital projects that we have underway, non-recurring, like the capital that's part of the operating budget.
Well, then can I ask, kind of as a corollary to that, are there other areas of the budget where you expect a large surplus that are kind of not called out because they're not needing to be transferred?
No.
Okay. I guess I'll wait for the next update.
Mrs. Kelly?
I just had one quick question, and I apologize because if you don't have the number, that's fine. But you mentioned the 450, and you said we'll talk about that later. But in general, and I think you mentioned that we already offset next year's ask based on this, so I don't know how we knew, like, when that 450 came about, but that's neither here nor there. I just don't remember how much, do you remember how much we put in then for the ELA in next year's budget? Normally I bring my budget book with me and I forgot.
I think, I don't want to misspeak, it was under 300,000. Do you know, Janine? Janine's here. Yeah, I believe it was about 300,000.
For next year's budget, it was 300 for next year, yeah.
Thank you.
Anyway, I'm going to ask a question on the excess cost. When you said we're receiving $100,000 less than expected, meaning less than budgeted or less than what we already knew was reduced? So we know we got about $400,000 less due to the change. Are we saying now we're going to be getting about $500,000 less?
Correct, yeah, less. Yeah, it's about 73.7% will be our reimbursement this year. And it's about $100,000 less than our most recent projection, which was already reduced, yes.
So I'm just going to be abundantly clear. We budgeted $3.653 million in excess cost reimbursement. What is the new number?
3.1 and change. I don't know the exact number, but it's 3.1. I want to say 6 and change, but I can get you that number.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else? All right. Can I just ask a quick follow-up while we're on the budget update? I don't know if Mr. George might want to come up. I'm wondering just some of the few things that we've had happen that were unbudgeted emergency type issues. Is that factoring into any of this right now in terms of your budgeting? So we've had a few incidents that weren't budgeted for, so just wanted to get an idea on what that was looking at in regards to costs.
We actually really have not had significant unbudgeted projects this year and anything that's come up as an emergency situation. We are working, I shouldn't say we haven't had any. We have had a couple. We're working to get them through. They'll be part of the budget transfers request next week. Off the top of my head, the only one I'm really jumping out at is the Sturgis Field repairs that need to happen over there because of some safety concerns. And also over at Ward, the bleachers for the baseball and softball are not really safe, so part of the transfers is we're going to try to get those replaced and better situated at Ward High School.
Those are two new ones to me. I was talking more about the gym floors that we ended up doing around Thanksgiving. I'm talking about the leaking water fountain incident that occurred with the ceiling tiles, so some of those types of events.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't. Those were mostly well, the water
Agency,
fountain was
but-
handled
yeah.
in-house, so it wasn't really, we handled it within the operating budget. It wasn't really a jump out at you. The gym floors, because of some shortage of materials from the manufacturer for the flooring finish in the gym floors, they became very slippery because of a premature breakdown in the flooring surfaces. So we will be moving forwards with resurfacing the two main playing gym floors this summer, or actually before the summer. As soon as school gets out, we will start with those processes.
I just wanted to get an idea as it pertained to the budget, but for the next agenda, for everyone's edification, I'll be putting on a facilities update. Mr. Peterson.
Angels, while you're at the table, thank you very much for taking down that dead tree at the main ward entrance on Melville Avenue.
I was going to mention it, and I said I was going to wait for you to mention it.
I pulled off all over the street just to make sure that it was gone. I drove by and I could not believe it. I was so happy to see it gone. Thank you.
It is gone, and the forestry committee is already talking about replacing it.
Oh, I hear you. I call him about dead trees, too.
All right, thank you both very much.
Just one thing, we've gone over on our grounds budget because of a lot of these types of issues. That just reminded me. So we have spent more than the budgeted amount on grounds. With the savings in snow removal.
All right. Thank you. All right, up next, new proposed English language arts resource update and first read, Ms. Goss.
So as Janine's coming up to begin her presentation, I just want to say that I want to thank Janine for leading an amazing group of teachers and administrators over the last 5 months. They put a lot of hard work, a lot of hours, a lot of time and effort into this. So I just want to thank them, all the teachers, all the administrators that assisted, and welcome Margie Gillis here tonight.
Just before we get started, we don't have copies. Yeah. Were we meant to have them at our desk?
No, but I can get them for you.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much.
Your email. Sorry about that.
Okay, no worries, thanks.
Okay, so I really am very happy to be here tonight with all of you to provide you with an update. And this meeting then will serve as a first read for you all in terms of the ELA pre-K through 5 programs that we will recommend at the end of this presentation. And so here's an agenda for the next couple of minutes. It will include an opportunity for you to gain a better understanding of the right to read legislation, as well as the science of reading. And as Mr. Testani said, we have Dr. Gillis here with us, who has been a partner in this work with us over the past few years and will help provide some insight into the science of reading and explain an approach to teaching reading that has been deemed most effective. I will also discuss with you what the impact of this legislation and the science of reading will be on teaching and learning here at Fairfield Public Schools. And then finally, we have some of our colleagues here in the audience from McGraw-Hill, as well as Houghton Mifflin Harcourt, who are going to share an overview with you all and some highlights of the literacy programs that we recommend for adoption as resources that will support our curriculum development and implementation in school year 24-25. So just like Mr. Testani said, we do need to thank a lot of people. We have been at this process, I believe, since November 4th. And first and foremost, I must thank Kristen Bruno from our pre-K, as well as our principals and our language arts specialists, coaches. They have put in a lot of time and effort since November 4th to try to get to this point in time. I do have to thank teachers, especially those who were on the program review team, as well as the teachers who helped us take a closer look at the two programs towards the very end that we wanted to explore even further. I have Stacy Vigent here in the audience, Alyssa Bardinelli, as well as Christine Iona, and they will come up and introduce and recommend the programs for adoption towards the end of this presentation. I do appreciate the support from our program directors. Dr. Jen Swingler has been a partner with me to make sure we've got that alignment pre-K through 12. I have been working with Lisa Oliver as well as Justine LaSala because they're going to help ensure that there is as much alignment as possible through the sciences and the arts as well as social studies. I do appreciate the work as well of our pre-K through 12 ELA steering committee. This is where that articulation from pre-K through 12 occurs. They've helped us sift through district-wide data as we looked for performance patterns, and those performance patterns will help inform the work that we are doing in our curriculum. I also, a special thanks from Dr. Margie Gillis, once again, President of Literacy How and Fairfield's partner. So I want to first start with the right to read legislation. And this was passed back, as you know, in June of 2021. And there are several states, I think we're up to 30, although I spoke with Dr. Melissa Hickey today, actually, when she came to visit McKinley today, and she says that there's a few other states that have now come on board as well. Dr. Hickey is the director of the center that has been established as part of this right to read legislation. And what it aims to do is it aims to systematize a statewide reading response based on the science of reading in pre-K through grade 3. So there are the highlights there. There's a lot to it, but one of the most impactful for us this coming school year is that the State Department now approves reading assessments. And so we are currently reviewing our assessment choices, and we are going to keep you updated as we learn more. The other impactful piece of the legislation is the fact that the State Department now approves reading programs. And this year, in Fairfield, we will also address the district improvement plan requirement for ELA curriculum work, and that happens every 10 years. So the fact that these are both happening at the same time will work out very nicely for us. But you should also know that toward the end of February, I believe, a raised bill came to the table. It's raised bill number 1094. And that has been proposed to the original legislation. And so again, I've summarized some of the main points here. A few changes are being proposed, and we are currently waiting to see if this bill passes. For one, the word comprehension was added. So now it reads, there must be a comprehensive reading model curriculum or program. In this raised bill, pre-K is being eliminated from the legislation in terms of needing to adopt a program. But our pre-K team has done a lot of work since November 4th, and in order for them to write new curriculum, they need resources to support that and to support the implementation. So even though this may go away in terms of legislation, pre-K wants to move forward, and we'll propose that in a few minutes. This bill also allows for staggered implementation of the reading program. So if superintendents want to phase in new programs, they certainly can. But because Fairfield is also writing ELA curriculum, it makes sense for us not to stagger, and it makes sense for us to implement all at once in 24-25, because we will have enough time between now and then to prepare teachers and leaders for this change. So this public hearing took place on March 1st, and we are currently waiting for the bill to either pass or any other changes to be made. So the right to read legislation is based on the science of reading, which Dr. Gillis will expand on in a minute. This long-standing history of the science of reading in Connecticut is illustrated here for you, and I'm just going to touch on a couple of main points, because this is not new. I remember back when I was teaching, and I've been teaching in the classroom since 1990. In 1997, Congress convened what they called the National Reading Panel. And this panel was brought together to assess the effectiveness of teaching practices. And it was determined that there were certain methods of teaching reading that were better than others. And it's around those 5 areas that we continue to talk about today: phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. Now, in 1999, Connecticut happened to be one of the very first states to convene their own early reading success panel. And what became of that success panel was the Connecticut's Blueprint for Reading Achievement. This was groundbreaking. It was exciting in terms of the efforts in the state of Connecticut. And what that did was it sort of solidified the research and the evidence for teaching literacy. Now, up to this point, you know, we had the evidence there, but it was not mandated, right? And so that's what the difference is between the science of reading history in Connecticut and where we are now, because now certain things are being mandated based upon this research. Then we get, so I'm going to jump all the way to 2010, because you're sitting here. And there was an assessment pilot that was done with Dr. Margie Gillis and Dr. Michael Coyne from UConn and the Center for Behavioral Education and Research over at UConn. And from there was an education reform called CK3LI, the Connecticut K-3 Literacy Initiative. I know it well. I was a part of it. I was responsible for phasing this in my previous district across all schools. And the Connecticut K-3 Literacy Initiative is a system of effective practices around 5 priority goals: around assessment, around distributed leadership, around curriculum and instruction, your multi-tiered system of support, and family engagement. And so that initiative is now called the Connecticut Literacy Model. And you will see that when you go on the state website. That's not required, but again, those effective practices have helped to inform where we are today in terms of the right to read legislation. So there is a flow, as you can see. Connecticut has been at the forefront of reading and advocacy for students, but the difference now is that Connecticut is requiring. I'm going to stop there for a moment before I turn this over to Dr. Gillis. Are there any questions about anything that I have shared so far? Okay. Dr. Gillis is going to expand a little bit on the science of reading.
I can do it. You have to hold this down? Gotcha. Okay, thank you, Janine, and thank you for inviting me to present this evening, a topic I love to talk about, and a topic that you've probably all read about in the press and other places. The science of reading is a big buzzword. I like it and I don't like it at the same time because I think it's been co-opted a little bit. But my definition and the definition that you see here on this slide talks about the fact that there is a science, a vast interdisciplinary body of scientifically based research about reading and issues related to reading and writing. This research has been out in the public domain for over 50 years. My 50th anniversary of teaching is next year. So I actually started studying this research in 1974 at the University of Connecticut. So I'm dating myself, but I can tell you that it's something that has always been my path and what has guided me through the work that I've done with students and teachers. Thousands of studies conducted in multiple languages around the world, and culminating in this preponderance of evidence of how proficient reading and writing develop for all types of students, why some have difficulty, and why the United States is in the crisis that it is right now, having roughly 35% of the students in our country reading on grade level. how we can most effectively assess and teach. So science of reading is really the research that should be informing what we're doing in classrooms. The science of teaching reading is another tangential body of research that we don't have enough of to guide us, and which is why we really need this curriculum that Janine spoke about and programs mandated so that teachers aren't guessing on, and having the fallout that we see for students. So this is probably something some of you have seen. It's Hollis Scarborough is a researcher. Actually, she was at Haskins Laboratories when I was there. And she did a study in 2002 that looked at all the contributing factors to skilled reading. So if you see the rope on the right-hand side, it shows skilled reading is the combination of executing and coordinating word recognition skills tied to comprehending what you can understand as you're reading text. So there's something called the simple view of reading that basically shows us that reading comprehension is the product of language comprehension. So you see at the top of the rope, all those things that children need to have in good shape to be able to comprehend language at a listening level. So you see all those strands there. And that is in combination with being able to read words. So this debate between phonics and comprehension is a false dichotomy. We really need both, and we need them to be interwoven throughout instruction, throughout the day, in all domains: science, social studies, math, ELA, et cetera. But I think this just really speaks to the complexity of reading and how much we need our teachers to understand to do the job. When we think about the science of reading and we talk about structured literacy, it's really the instruction that is tied to the science. So structured literacy is really, as it says here, provision of systematic, explicit instruction that integrates listening and speaking, which is part of oral language, which should be at the heart of every classroom, lots of conversations and discussions, coupled with the reading and writing instruction that children receive. And the reason structured literacy, that term is used, is because it speaks to the fact that every language has a structure that includes its sound system, what we call its phonology, its writing system, what we refer to as its orthography, or how words are spelled, how sentences are constructed, otherwise known as syntax, the fact that English is both phonemic and based on morphology or meaning, so we teach those meaningful parts to students throughout the grade levels. And then lastly, we have to talk about vocabulary and semantics. So all of these elements are part of a structured literacy approach, and the program that will be utilized in Fairfield would be based on these principles and these elements of language that are alluded to here. You want me to speak to this too? So one of the things that I think has been discussed very explicitly in this discussion about the science of reading and what's structured literacy versus what we would call balanced or typical literacy practice is some differences, and I've just highlighted two for you this evening. In a structured literacy approach, we would see beginning readers, and by beginning readers, we're talking about children in kindergarten into first grade, in some cases maybe into second grade, who would need to practice reading fluency, both accuracy and automaticity. And we do this by using decodable texts because they have specific patterns that the children have been taught explicitly, and then they have an opportunity to practice to build that automaticity and to be able to apply what they're learning in their phonics instruction. That is in opposition to, if you will, to what is a typical literacy practice of using a leveled text and really leveling children based on the leveled text, which is subjective and somewhat arbitrary. Certainly no research to support the use of those leveled texts to determine how and when to move children to successive levels. Another part of that practice that's problematic is having children look at pictures instead of looking at the words to figure out when they don't know what a word is. Again, no science behind that practice. Another distinction between the two, I think it's the next slide, yep, is in structured literacy, there's a very big difference between how spelling is taught in each of these practices. In structured literacy, spelling is considered extremely important. It's reciprocal to decoding. When children learn to spell and spell reliable patterns, it actually supports not only their decoding, but their fluency and, believe it or not, their comprehension. It has to be following a specific scope and sequence, et cetera, as opposed to in balanced literacy. Typical literacy practice for spelling is that the students will learn a list of words. They'll practice those words over the course of the week. They'll memorize those words to pass the spelling test, but they're not part of a systematic scope and sequence to build, like I said, that reading fluency. So just two illustrations of the different, how they might look different in those practices. Oh, you threw in a third. All right. And another one that's, I think, a very interesting distinction in structured literacy. As I mentioned earlier, structured literacy not only includes phonics. Oftentimes people think of structured literacy as just phonics. It really goes beyond phonics to include explicit instruction in sentence structure, which is not only important for comprehension, but it's extremely important when we want children to write coherent sentences and paragraphs, et cetera. So those structures of language are explicitly taught as opposed to typical literacy practices. They may be embedded or implicit, but not necessarily explicitly taught.
And so referring back to Scarborough's rope, this metaphor for the science of reading, I wanted to share with you kind of where our focus has been this year. As we work within current structures and current curriculum, we focused in two different areas. So in K2, even though some decodable texts were already being used in some of our schools, we brought consistency across the schools in all K2 classrooms. We purchased decodable text for our K2 students, and we provided classroom teachers with professional learning and a decodable text routine so that they can match those texts that are aligned with the skills and the concepts that they were teaching students. We look forward to building up these classroom libraries with even more decodable text. You know, 1 or 2 sets are not enough. Teachers should have access to several different publishers, actually. So when these texts, when we purchase programs, we will be getting some more with the program, so I'm excited about that. In grades 3 through 5, we focused on what I call a non-negotiable, and that's the explicit teaching of vocabulary across grades 3 through 5. And so again, within the current structures and the current curriculum, I provided teachers with an explicit teaching protocol that they can embed into their current schedule just prior to a read aloud. And so they're learning how to choose what we call tier 2 words. Those are what we also call bang for our buck words. These are words that are used across many different contexts, such as words like analyze, coincidence, absurd. And then grades 3 through 5 teachers are also explicitly teaching words that students will encounter on the Smarter Balanced Assessment, words like skim and passage and similar. So our students will do better on SBA if they understand what the questions are asking them. And so sometimes that academic vocabulary is quite challenging. And so a couple of 100 words per year need to be explicitly taught. And that's obviously not the only way students learn vocabulary. They learn it through their reading, they learn it through their conversations, but that explicit piece is very, very important. And so just a few more ideas to mention regarding teaching and learning and how FPS is responding to the legislation based on the work of the science of reading. So again, we are most grateful for Dr. Gillis and Literacy How in our partnership. And at McKinley, as you know, the Early Literacy Academy is there. and that ongoing professional learning for teachers has been so amazing. We look forward to opening up another classroom that will support students across the district in this effort as well. And then, as you can see here, we are phasing in the professional learning for our teachers and our leaders. Our kindergarten teachers and our special education teachers this year are finishing up their Literacy House Structured Literacy series, and they have voiced that they are very excited about embedding those practices in our new curriculum documents. So the Literacy How materials and strategies will be supplemental in our curriculum. Next year, we are making plans, and Dr. Gillis and I actually met last week about this, to provide this opportunity to grades 1 and 2 teachers next year, as well as our middle school language arts specialists, reading teachers, and SRBI coordinators. They are going to learn how to more effectively teach adolescent literacy, and so that's going to be pretty exciting for them. And finally, the most impactful implication, and really the reason why we're here tonight, is to talk about the implication that it has for our ELA curricula. And so we look forward to adopting programs that will provide us with resources to address the effective practices based on the science of reading. And I say that we're going to use these programs as resources. They will be our first stop. We will supplement with other resources as needed. And all of these will be explicitly named in the new documents. We talked about the new curriculum being vertically aligned based on our district improvement plan. We will consider the vision of the graduate first and foremost. How does that look across the grades? We will look at our essential questions from pre-K all the way through grade 12 and look to see where we can align and spiral those throughout the grades. The core instructional practices will be routines throughout the grades where students might, for example, learn how to annotate text in a special way, and that is done throughout grade levels as well as across disciplines. This new curriculum will be content-based, and that is going to be based on what is in our new programs that we will provide to you as a recommendation in social studies and science as well as in the arts. They will include text sets and practices that are culturally relevant, and we talked about this, creating the assured experiences pre-K through 12. A 3-year professional development plan has been negotiated. We know that a program will not produce the results we are looking for. I'm going to say that again. We are not in denial. No adoption of any program will produce the results we are looking for. We need to reach each and every child, but our teachers are the biggest piece of this puzzle. They need the professional learning, but they need the guidance and the materials from the program in order to be able to implement. So, with that said, and I know I'm putting the cart before the horse, but I'm going to show this to you anyway, and then we can circle back. This slide speaks to the budget we are looking at. You'll notice, and I'm glad you now have copies. I apologize that I forgot to do that. You'll notice that for both pre-K and K-5 programs, there is a 6-year subscription. It is much more effective, cost-effective to do it in that way. The bottom line cost for pre-K is about $59,000, and that we will pay in 2 installments. I'm envisioning now, this year, before June 30th, that we pay about $10,000, and then we will pay the remainder in the year 24-25, about $49,000. That $10,000 will be able to give us the materials that we need in order to begin to learn about the program and write curriculum from it. If you look at the bottom half for inter-reading K-5, the total cost for materials is $1 million. This is slightly higher than the $888,000 that I initially had negotiated. The reason for that is because I want to make sure that our English language teachers, as well as our special education teachers, receive materials up front as well. I always like to say that anyone who touches a child's life needs to be able to make sure they have access to that core. And they will also have access to the 3 years you'll see here of professional learning, which is both in-person and virtual. There will be, every single school will receive in-person about, I believe, I have it here. I believe it might be 4 in-person days and 8 30-minute online sessions and so on and so forth. I have the breakdown. and that's going to be key. So again, with Into Reading, we're going to pay that in 3 installments. In May of 2023, we're looking to pay $363,000, and then in the next 2 years, we'll pay our next 2 installments. If you look at the very bottom, at the 23-24 and 24-25 installment, that cost will be less what we anticipate to receive from the state. That has not been confirmed yet. We don't have an amount, so we're holding on that. But we are supposed to be receiving state grant money for this initiative, and we look forward to hearing what that amount will be. Last but not least, I remember the board asking, if we were to spend that money now, how are we going to spend the $450,000? This is my proposal. For this year, once approved, we propose paying for materials, professional learning, and curriculum design cost. So if we look at pre-K, there's that $10,000 that I mentioned. If we look at Into Reading in K-5, there's that $363,000. And then we are paying curriculum teacher hours between now and the end of June, as well as for a consultant in the amount of $76,950. Thanks. So this process of the pre-K through 12 curriculum work will all be done, as I said, in the service of the vision of the graduate, ensuring that we reach each and every student and we provide more targeted, explicit, systematic support to students who need it, but we also want to elevate and enrich the opportunities for students who need to be challenged, and we will absolutely do that. We believe our program choices that you're going to hear about now in pre-K through 5 will do just that, and coupled with teacher professional development. I am going to call up Stacy Vigent and Alyssa Bardinelli, and they're going to welcome our first colleague from McGraw-Hill to get us started on the last part of our presentation.
Hi, my name is Alyssa Bardinelli, and I'm one of the ECC teachers at Stratfield. This is my 7th year, and I've been serving on the curriculum committee this year.
Hi, I'm Stacy Vigent. I am one of the special education teachers at ECC Stratfield, and this is my 19th year in the district. So Alyssa and I are here to represent the entire ECC program and the teachers and at Ward and at Stratfield. And we want to share with you that our team of teachers would like to recommend that we adopt the McGraw-Hill's World of Wonders to inform our curriculum design and implementation. Alyssa and I had the opportunity to review several programs, and we feel that World of Wonders will help to provide the resources and guidance we need to support our preschool learners. With your approval, we will use World of Wonders as our primary resource alongside Bridges for Math. I would like to introduce Katie Condern from McGraw-Hill. She's the curriculum specialist who has been working with us this year as we consider this program, which we would like to use moving forward. Katie will share an overview of the program with highlights for you to consider the request of our approval. Any questions?
All right. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for the opportunity to share World of Wonders with you. World of Wonders is McGraw-Hill's developmentally appropriate curriculum for pre-K students based in the science of reading. So it's very nice to be able to follow Dr. Gillis, and we'll see the components here that connect with the science of reading to really support our youngest learners. Let me get this here. Thank you. Sounds good. All righty. So World of Wonders is a pre-K program with a literacy base. So we're supporting our students in pre-K with rich literacy skills rooted in a nice, diverse set of literature. We're good, Janine. Thank you. So as we're thinking about the literature in World of Wonders, we'll be thinking about a number of different opportunities for students to interact with books. So we'll be looking at big books that we're sharing with our students, individual student-sized books, manipulatives that will help build the concepts of print, as well as digital resources to support students as we are developing those early literacy skills. We also wanted to share Scarborough's Rope with you. We had that nice overview, and we are, of course, talking about the components of Scarborough's Rope that are applicable to pre-K. So we're looking about the phonemic awareness, starting to build those concepts of print, and really focusing on oral language and listening comprehension. World of Wonders is organized into 10 units. Each unit is designed to be 4 weeks long, with resources that are progressing through skills as we move through each of the units. Each of the units is 4 weeks long, leaving teachers opportunities for teacher choice and voice, as we say. Teachers are able to incorporate their own resources, connecting with the themes. If you can see the themes on the screen, we're talking about food and nature, common preschool themes that often connect nicely with resources that teachers have in their classroom, and really building knowledge for students around the world around them. Teachers also can utilize digital resources for planning and presenting with the students. We'll find that the resources in World of Wonders are divided up into social emotional learning, alphabet time, book time, and content time. And we'll see that consistent structure on a daily basis, a weekly basis, and then within each unit. Teachers and students have access to the digital components of World of Wonders that we can be using to enhance the instruction. Everything that we find in print will also be available in the digital space, plus so much more, as you can imagine, songs and videos and games that our students can be playing. World of Wonders has resources to be working on a full-day curriculum 5 days a week. We also have guidance around using the resources in half-day programs, 5 days, 4 days, 3 days, all sorts of different setups that we find in a pre-K classroom. So to have a little walk through World of Wonders, we'll take a look at the way World of Wonders is thinking about our youngest learners, and starting with purposeful play opportunities. We'll be thinking about developing social emotional skills, and then focusing on early literacy, building alphabet skills, book skills, and math and music and movement, all while supporting differentiated instruction, assessment, and kindergarten readiness. So thinking about our young learners, we know, of course, our students need to have opportunities to move, to be supporting their gross development, gross motor development, to be interacting with each other. So we're building in opportunities for this within World of Wonders. This is going to connect with the theme, so talking about Scarborough's Rope and building knowledge. Unit centers will be connecting with each of our themes on a daily basis. We also will have opportunities to be making connections with families. So a school-to-home letter is available in 9 different languages, letting families know what's happening in school, and also giving suggestions for families to help support the development of the skills and the topics at home. When we're starting our different topics in World of Wonders, we're going to be supporting students in conversation, and conversation starters, focus questions. These essential questions are going to be the crux of the topics as we're working through each of our units. A student interactive word book gives students a chance to be able to interact with the different topics, to be able to have a way to have an output connected with each of our units. When we're talking about developing social emotional skills, we know, of course, this is so important for all students. And thinking about our pre-K students, daily social emotional lessons will be utilized to support students on popular topics, as you can see, such as making good choices, working together, and a number of resources within World of Wonders are specifically designed for the SEL instruction. This is rooted in guidance from everyone's favorite, Mr. Rogers. He's offering supports for teachers around the social emotional development, connecting with the themes. Also, sign language and songs are incorporated into the SEL instruction. Moving on to alphabet time, we'll have daily lessons in phonemic awareness, alphabet recognition, and high-frequency words that are using our language and literacy flip chart, incorporating rhymes and songs, along with using our manipulatives that are going to give students a hands-on component for building their language skills. World of Wonders is a spiralized recursive program, so we are introducing letters, introducing high-frequency words, listening for the sounds, and returning to those on a spiralized basis. When we're thinking about book time, we started with talking about World of Wonders as a literacy-based program, so we'll be reading books, digging deep into these books, enjoying different texts. Notice classic tales, nursery rhymes, along with a collection of fiction and nonfiction resources for students. We'll be working through these lessons, incorporating print awareness, comprehension skills, opportunities for journaling, for responding to text, drawing in response, and having great, rich conversations around the literature. Students have their own size books. We have 2 different books for students to be able to read on a regular basis, to be able to incorporate looking at high-frequency words. And then on the next screen, we'll see the decodable books that we have at our youngest grades, our little readers, where students are going to be employing the phonics that we're introducing. Science and social studies are part of the content that we talk about. We talk about ABC, alphabet time, book time, content time. So science and social studies topics connecting with the frameworks are going to be included in the instruction. These incorporate whole group and small group components along with digital resources, as you can see on the screen, with nice high definition images for our students to be looking at. And we'll find a similar layout for social studies as well. Whole group and small group components, and then hands-on activities for every week. So once again, back to giving our students a chance to really interact with the content, to be active as we are learning. I was thinking about the way that you're using Bridges math. World of Wonders incorporates many opportunities for revisiting topics. If Bridges is driving the instruction, our center activities are going to be nice, connected and spiralized review or extension activities incorporated. And using manipulatives and music and movement is a key part of the instruction as well. So weekly music and movement opportunities to connect once again with the themes. And then on the next screen, we'll see that we have great digital components where we're able to hear the songs and play along with these activities as well. So when we're thinking about our pre-K students, just like at every grade level, we want to make sure that we have opportunities to meet the needs of all of the learners in our classroom. So for all of the lessons that we've been looking at, we'll find lesson structures for whole group instruction. And then on the next screen, we'll see that we are incorporating differentiated instruction at 3 different levels. For our 4-year-old students, kind of what we would consider a student who would need additional reinforcement with the instruction, we'll have a number of different activities for all the parts of the instruction. For our students who we're looking to add additional support, we'll find activities that will benefit these students. And then for our advanced students and our students who are getting ready for kindergarten, for alphabet time, book time, content time, we'll find lessons that will enable a teacher to be able to support those students as well. differentiated instruction for English language learners, including specific resources for our English language learners are incorporated into the instruction, along with suggestions for differentiating the instruction for students with special needs. And of course, we know data drives instruction, so we'll have a number of different assessment opportunities within World of Wonders, opportunities to collect portfolios, to have interviews with students, to have individual check-ins with students on skills, to collect data in terms of observations and checklists, and then a flip chart that we can use for one-on-one interactions with students around their motor skills, math, and language skills. And then finally, when we're thinking about our students who are ready to go off to kindergarten, our very last unit in World of Wonders is Ready for Kindergarten. This is actually a 2-week unit, and we'll be supporting students as they're transitioning. This is going to connect with any kindergarten program that we're working into. And we'll give teachers the opportunity to work on 2 weeks of lessons supporting students in that transition, as well as giving them time to do the individualized assessments that we're often doing at the end of a pre-K. Once again, Mr. Rogers is back to help support our students as they're making that big transition from pre-K to kindergarten. So as we think about World of Wonders, we're talking about daily social emotional instruction, we're talking about building literacy, alphabet skills, language comprehension, science and social studies, as well as differentiating the instruction for our students. Last thing I just want to point out is that Janine already mentioned professional development is a key component of World of Wonders, and we would be your partner in that, customizing that professional development for the teachers. Are there any questions?
Okay, thank you so much for your presentation. Does anyone have questions on the pre-K piece? Mrs. Guernsey.
I'm not sure this might be a question for our own staff, but it's applied to the Wonders resource. And I'm just wondering, because we heard earlier today that the preschool is a combined 3-4s program. So I'm just trying to understand how this resource would, like, what's the timeline for implementing the resource to these students so that they're not repeating the same content. And also, you know, like you were talking about the Ready for Kindergarten, but some of the kids aren't ready for no?
I think that was just the high school preschool that is combined. I don't think it's the ECC.
Is this applying to the high school preschool as well, or no?
No.
No, just the ECC. Oh, I don't know. I'm asking.
So ECC has 3s and 4-year-olds. It's combined. Yes.
Okay. I guess I'm just trying to understand how they'll use this to prepare our students without recycling through the same units of study. I don't understand how
The
it's
program
implemented.
has differentiation activities. So the kids that are 3 will be doing different things with the literature and different activities, and the 4-year-olds will be doing different things, and that'll be happening in small group instruction.
But the units of study that you showed here are across one academic school year, and then they
Yes.
repeat the next year, but are differentiated differently?
Well, there's the same units, but there are different activities for the 4-year-olds in there.
Okay, thank you. And the other question I just had is around digital resources. I'm just concerned about students' access to screen time, given the advice from American Academy of Pediatrics and other great resources. So could you speak to that, please?
Well, I'm probably the wrong person to ask because I'm old school. There's a ton of hands-on resources that I plan on using and then offering to the parents if they want to use some of the digital. I agree. I think kids are too on tablets and screens too much, so I try and do as much as I can hands-on and with literature and books and puppets and all of that.
As we write our curriculum, we are not prioritizing the digital component.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Gerber.
Yeah, thank you. I guess this is, how many programs did we look at for pre-K?
I believe 4. We looked at Amplify's pre-K program. We looked at Benchmark. We looked at World of Wonders, of course, and we looked at MyView Literacy, which was called 3 Cheers for pre-K. We looked at 4. Not each of the programs had a pre-K component. Into Reading did not have a pre-K, and that's why they selected World of Wonders, which they liked very much.
And how many people were part of the selection process?
So all of the pre-K teachers attended the meeting for the last presentation, which was World of Wonders, and then Stacy, Alyssa, and Kristen Bruno represented on the program review committee.
So all the preschool teachers were part of the presentation for this, but in terms of the other 3 that were not chosen, how many people were a part of that process?
Correct. In terms of pre-K, there were the 3 of you, Kristen Bruno, Stacy, and Alyssa. They were the representation from pre-K. And so they were able to weed out which ones they wanted to bring back to their team. Initially, they brought 2 back, which was Benchmark, because we realized that because of what was happening with legislation, pre-K was probably not going to be required any longer, so we brought in a different program. So they took a look at Benchmark as well as World of Wonders, and that's why we narrowed it down to World of Wonders.
Mrs. Maxon-Kennelly.
Thank you. Should I'm ready. Hold on, get to my pre-K. First of all, and this is kind of jumping the gun a little bit, but I assume that there is, since it's going to be 2 different programs for the pre-K and then the K through 5, that that they are yet integrated, because obviously not every program is lockstep with every other company's program. So that has been examined explicitly between Wonders and the Into Reading?
It's been looked at, but it has to be examined closely when we do the curriculum work. So that's why we said on our very first meeting, once we receive some PD, we're going to work on the alignment. We're going to look at essential questions. We're going to look at the vision of a graduate. Those are the things that's going to kind of be the glue. Resources are resources. They're pretty similar in terms of the components, but that's going to be the glue, and that's something that we're going to work on.
Okay. Because I am recognizing that while these are just materials, there's a curriculum directive in there. Obviously, as it sets out weeks and as it sets out units, there's a bit of a, now not that you couldn't shuffle them, but having just been through this with math, this is more than just a resource, and I'm not saying that as a negative in this case. I think this is a wealth of great material here that has the science behind it, that can support our staff, but I'm actually concerned, and to Mrs. Guernsey's point, is everything that is covered in this repeated in kindergarten? Because unlike all of the rest of our curricula, we can't guarantee that every student has, in fact, we know for a fact that every student will not have had this pre-K experience. So how does that factor into the curriculum creation?
It factors in terms of having materials to meet the needs of each and every student. So we take students where they are, and we bring them from where they are to where they need to be, no matter what. So we will have materials to meet the needs of students who need to be challenged, students who need support in terms of our diverse learners, in terms of our English language learners as well. So no matter where they are, we will have the materials to support them. We recognize the fact that not everyone will have had this kind of experience. So this will give students more of a quick start, which is great. And then we have time for small group instruction where we can make changes and scaffold for students who need that extra support. So we will have the materials.
So the point being, in kindergarten, someone who has, okay, I'm oversimplifying here in a silly way, someone who has not seen the letter A sitting right next to someone who has been through this program, those are students in 2 very different places. and that's all falling on the single kindergarten teacher.
Can I answer that? That's already happening. So kids come to kindergarten with a variety of different experiences, and I know from what we're doing now that teachers at Stratfield have said our kids coming out of our pre-K they were ready to be in kindergarten. And you don't know, like we can't control the nursery schools and all of that.
Great
So
point.
it's already happening that way.
Great point. And what is the curriculum commitment of this? For example, we've talked about, when we were talking about the child development courses going from 2 days a week to 4 days a week, we've been talking with the ECC about half-day preschool and full-day preschool. So this program is designed to be implemented in what span of time? So therefore, how is Fairfield adapting to that?
So currently, we have a half-day program, and what we're planning to do is write curriculum around that. We have to develop the learning model to match the time that we have and prioritize what's in these programs to meet the needs of our students. We can't do everything. And these programs have way more in there than we could ever possibly use, and so we have to strategically pick and choose in that scope and sequence to make it make sense for us.
But whatever gets picked and chosen will be consistent across all classrooms.
You got it. It will be consistent because it will be outlined in our curriculum document, and that will be the framework from which we lesson plan from.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Can I put a little plug in there? We would like to have fours come all day because we want to really get them ready for kindergarten. I know that's one of the things that ECC is looking for in the future. So we hear what you're saying, and we're hopeful that move that way.
Right, and that's something we've already talked about at the board table, so we're aware of the desire for that. My last question is, we did just have the presentation from the child development. Those are students, most of whom would be Fairfield residents. Is there any thought of having this in any capacity push in or be represented in that curriculum that's part of Ward and Ludlow?
That's part, okay, repeat the question.
So
I'm not sure
in
I'm
other words, that
understanding.
Ward and Ludlow have their own preschools.
Ward and Stratfield. You're talking about the Ward and Stratfield? Oh, that program. I apologize. I'm
No.
thinking of the Ward and Stratfield.
No.
Okay. Right. No, you know what? I didn't even think about that. That's something that we should probably consider.
I mean, in terms of, obviously,
Absolutely.
we have the representative, I don't know, is she still here? Yes, of someone who in high school is learning these techniques. What
The
a
child
great
development
boon
courses,
to
yes.
those, as we try to broaden the teacher recruitment, but to actually be training them in this as well. I just add that thought.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Vitale.
Have you shared any of these resources with your students in terms of making decisions? Have you kind of, done a little test run on any of it?
I have not, no.
I haven't either. We haven't gotten a ton of materials. We just have what we got from our curriculum review.
And when you speak of, professional development for special education teachers, are you including speech and language pathologists in that?
Yes, in fact, speech and language pathologists are going to be a part of our curriculum development team at the pre-K through 2 level. Very
Great.
important.
Yep, great, thank you.
Mrs. Gerber.
Yeah, have you spoken to any districts that have already been using this to see how it's worked, its efficacy, how happy they are?
Actually, I have. My previous district adopted this, and they absolutely loved it. Yes, in Norwalk.
Any other districts or just?
No, I haven't talked to any other districts, but we can ask, do you know, Katie, any other districts here locally that use this? Yeah, well, that we can?
Definitely. Waterbury uses it, I believe. Plainfield, I know that's the other side of the state, but Brookfield, Clarissa can get you a whole list for sure.
I know that a few of our teachers at Ward, their children are in kindergarten, and they're using this, but I don't know what districts they're in. And they liked it.
Mrs. Maxon Kelly?
Just one last quick question. I just wanted to clarify something that, Ms. Gossett, you said when I was meeting with you earlier. We will have a document where we can submit additional questions as well. So if it doesn't come out now, we will have a chance to submit those.
Yes, thank you. I created a Google Doc similar to the one that you had during budget season. So this way, after tonight, we'll send it through the superintendent's office tomorrow. You can post questions and we can get those answered so that by May 9th, you would have a lot more information. Because we realize we can't be here all evening.
Anyone else on the pre-K? Otherwise, we'll move to the K3, K5. All right, thank you for Wenders.
Thank you.
All right, anyone have questions on into reading? Mrs. Guernsey.
I'm not sure if it would be helpful for the board, but I wonder if the presentation we just received on Wonders could be made available as well, because I thought some of those slides were really interesting for
I
backup.
will link
Thank you.
that in the document tonight so that you'll have it tomorrow.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Hi, I'm Christine Iona. I'm a fourth grade teacher at Sherman Elementary School. I've been in district, at Sherman for 8 years. I taught third grade for 5 years and fourth grade. This is my third year in fourth grade. I'm here to share that we recommend that we adopt Houghton Mifflin Harcourt's Into Reading to inform our K through 5 curriculum design work and implementation. Through a long and thorough process, teachers and leaders had the opportunity to review several programs and have chosen HMH's Into Reading. This program will help to provide the resources and guidance we need for our curriculum design work and implementation. With your approval, we will use Into Reading as our primary resource alongside supplemental resources such as Hegarty and Literacy How's effective practices as an example to meet the needs of each and every student. I would like to introduce Amelia Kaysen and Kelly Joseph, who have been working with us this year as we considered the program we would like to use moving forward. Amelia and Kelly will share an overview of the program and some highlights with you as you consider our request for approval.
Hi, I'm Amelia Kaysen. Thank you so much for having us tonight. My colleague Kelly Joseph is going to walk you through Into Reading.
Technical difficulties, apologies.
Go to the other one. Not part
Click on Not a Part of Houghton Mifflin. We might be able to even just scroll through from here. It won't show the builds, so it'll look maybe slightly messy, but it can still work if the preview pulls up. Sure. Yep, we can kind of talk through just verbally if we need to, which is also fine. Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you for giving us a chance to share with you some information from HMH's Into Reading, which is our comprehensive K-5 literacy resource. My name is Kelly Joseph. I'm a manager of curriculum and content in HMH, and thrilled to have this opportunity to share with you tonight. One thing we know is that, especially in this day and age, teachers in particular have an awful lot on their plates, and that could be the understatement of the century. And so what teachers really need are resources that are teacher-friendly, that are student-friendly, that include engaging literature that's motivating for students, and something that provides them with the tools and resources that are necessary to help them to easily and effectively differentiate their instruction so that they're able to meet the needs of every student every day. What Into Reading does is it invites our students to think critically about literature. It invites our students to participate in authentic reading and writing tasks. And it also helps our students to build a love of reading. And that means a lot to me because I'm a 15-year veteran of the classroom. I taught K-3, so literacy interventionist for the entire of my career as well. And building that love of reading is also mission critical. A couple of highlights about Into Reading, a few things that we hear from our teacher users in particular that really make Into Reading stand out and effective in their eyes. One is that it is tightly aligned to the science. You saw that amazing presentation about what that research shows about how we build the reading brain. Oh, good. If we can, on the left-hand side there, if you're able to go to the third slide down, that would be great. Perfect. Thank you. So you've already seen this visual tonight, but what we, where did it go? We'll wait for that to come back up. You've already seen that reading rope tonight. But what we know about how we build the reading brain is that it is a product of both those word recognition skills around building phonics and decoding skills, encoding or learning to spell what we're learning to decode, the phonological awareness piece for our youngest learners, the building of vocabulary, the building of deep comprehension skills. Language is all an important part of this. And this is exactly what Into Reading does for our teachers and for our students. There you go. Perfect. Yep, excellent. Another thing that's important to know as well is that Into Reading was built on the very fabric of the resources, built on support for our multilingual learners, English language learners as well. In addition to the integrated and embedded supports that help to scaffold the learning for students that need heavier, more substantial language support down to students that need light levels of support, there is guidance directly within the teacher's guide, but more than that. One thing that we know about the needs of our language learners in particular is that it's more than just what's the labeled pieces on the page. Our students need that equity of opportunity and access. There should be an integration of content with language. There should be a functional approach to language development and also heavy collaboration among stakeholders. And that's built into the fabric of what Into Reading is and what it does. In addition, if you click on number 5, again, it's a little bit hidden underneath. There's a build here. But Into Reading supports all 5 of those pillars of early literacy. So this includes ensuring that we have daily support, especially in kindergarten through grade 2, for explicit phonological and phonemic awareness. Decoding and phonics is also a heavy part of this, and that does not end in grade 2. This continues all the way up through grade 5. Fluency is a big part of this. Explicit vocabulary is a big part of this. And ensuring that deep comprehension skills are being built is a big part of this as well. So go ahead and click on 6, perfect. So again, teachers, whatever our teacher users said, I work all over the country really, but primarily here in the Northeast. I've worked with teachers across all of New England, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Maryland, DC. And what we hear almost to a person about what makes Into Reading so effective in the classroom, is that it is built on these exceptional text sets of very carefully curated, high-interest, award-winning, real, actual literature that we're using as models to support the instruction, both for reading and for writing. That there is exceptional, explicit foundational skills instruction that builds on, and I heard your question earlier, how do we support these students that are coming in from with no pre-K experience versus students that do have? Into Reading's development team has taken that into consideration and has really taken the time to build in, especially early in kindergarten, an opportunity for prerequisite skills, looking at early print concepts, building the ideas around academic, early language, looking at alphabet knowledge, and so on. So that's a consideration that was taken here. The language development and vocabulary instruction instruction is explicit and systematic, and it also offers an ease of use both for teachers and for students, so that we're trying to take off of that heavy load off of teachers' shoulders and provide them with materials that they don't need to spend a ton of time on planning and preparation. So all of the instruction within Into Reading is built, again, on this award-winning literature. This is our opportunity for our teachers to name for our students, this is what readers do. Readers do these things, and now I'm going to show you how and model for you how readers do those things. And we do that through exceptional text sets, again, of carefully curated award-winning literature. And if you can go to the next visual, this is provided to teachers in a couple of different formats based on grade level. For our primary teachers in K1 and 2, this is driven primarily by big books and read aloud trade books. I brought an example here to show. So these resources are used for interactive read alouds to be, again, that model and that introduction to high quality literature to immerse our students in that text. And an ability to reach out to provide teachers with ease of planning support. There's teaching tools that go along with this that also provide consistency for teachers across grades and buildings with a tool called a Book Sticks. This is a little teaching tool that sticks right to the back of the text that includes those higher order thinking questions, dialogic discussion prompts, ways to make that read aloud interactive. So when teachers are working, say, with reading Jabari Jumps to their students, the students may be looking at the text like this, but on the back facing the teachers, everything that they need to support that conversation around that literature selection. When we begin to move past primary grades, and in fact beginning in grade 1 and moving all the way up, you can go back up to the other slide, please. The rest of the literature from grade 1 through grade 5 is housed in what we call the Student My Book. And this My Book is a library, a collection of actual award-winning real literature, but it is in a consumable write-in format. And this is important for a couple of reasons. This is going to allow our students to do things like annotate, highlight, underline, make notes in the margin directly in the literature itself, so it provides them with that meaningful shared reading experience where they're immersed in the text. The other reason it's so important that it's in this consumable format is because when we finish using these My Books at school, this collection of, again, award-winning literature goes home with our students. And that's a game changer because that's equity and access to text for every child. They're getting the chance to build their own library over time as they go through school. Now, go ahead and if you can move to the next one. Just like we have those book sticks that I mentioned for the big books and the read aloud stories, again, for that ease of use for teachers for planning and instruction, we wanted that same level of ease of use for the selections in the My Book, and that's where our Teaching Pal comes in. The Teaching Pal is the teacher's own copy of that student My Book, but it is annotated with these little color-coded sticky notes, if you will, that provide them with their discussion prompts, with their annotation tips, ideas for think-alouds, and ways to model using those key critical reading skills within literature. So that's provided for teachers. And in another piece, not only are there reading for understanding supports, targeted close read, but there are also supports here for our close reading protocol, which is called the Notice and Note Strategies for Close Reading. This is something that was created by Dr. Kylene Beers and Dr. Robert Probst. This helps to make the idea of close reading and text analysis much easier for students and for teachers to understand, provides vertical alignment with common language throughout, helping our students to be able to easily see through the use of what are called signposts, the things that readers need to focus on and pay attention to, their purpose for reading. All of the modules for instruction within Into Reading are also tied specifically to science and social studies domains. The reason for doing this is because of the importance of the language comprehension side of that reading rope that we saw, ensuring our students have adequate background knowledge and understanding of content to be able to hang their hat on their learning and make those important connections to become skillful readers. All of this is built on a foundation of explicit, systematic, foundational skills instruction. So if you go to the next slide, please. What our teachers are being provided with is daily a direct, explicit instruction in all of those key areas that you heard mentioned earlier: phonological phonemic awareness in K-2, phonics decoding, spelling, or encoding, what we're learning to decode in all grades, K to 5. This does not end in grade 2. Word recognition and fluency. And this is built on a scope and sequence that is systematic, consistent, realistically paced, and it is cumulative. Those concepts build on one another, and there is ample opportunity for review. We're not moving on in each new grade level until we have thoroughly reviewed the content, the material that came the year before. So we spend almost the entirety of the first third to half of first grade going back and reviewing those kindergarten skills. We begin second grade with a consistent review of what we've learned in K and 1 and so on up through the grades to ensure mastery and that no students fall through the gaps. Now, all of this is being supported. Apologies, there's a build here, so it looks messy on the slide. But all of this is built on that concept that you heard earlier of structured literacy. Our teachers are being provided with daily lesson slides that are in PowerPoint format that guide them through the instruction with detailed teacher notes to take them through all of those key components, with lots of opportunities for teachers to see support built in. This is intended to help level the playing field for all teachers, so regardless of their level of training in the science of reading, all teachers have the tools and materials to effectively instruct in this manner so that our students are able to reap the benefits of that type of structured literacy. Teachers are also provided with tools so that they don't have to waste their time creating things on their own, things like anchor charts that help to highlight those phonics rules, as well as, if you go to the next piece, plenty of decodable text. We heard the importance of decodable text early in our reading careers. The Start Right readers within Into Reading support what's going on with the overall scope and sequence and provide our students with meaningful practice independently on each of those pieces. We also know the importance of vocabulary instruction that was mentioned earlier as well. And so if you click on the next slide, not only within Into Reading are we going to explicitly and systematically teach what you heard referred to as those tier 2 words, the critical language and vocabulary in every grade, but we are also going to have explicit language teaching time around things like generative vocabulary and vocabulary strategies as well to ensure that we're building that breadth of overall oral language that then feeds into our reading and our writing language as well. Teachers also need the opportunity to have access to tools to help them to effectively differentiate their instruction and intervene if necessary without having to create those tools on their own. So if you click to the next visual, please. Into Reading provides a complete, comprehensive toolkit that is going to support teachers in meeting students' needs, whether they need help with foundational early literacy skills, comprehension, or language development support. Writing is also a major part of this as well. And when we think about writing, there's 2 types of writing tasks that are primary. One is learning to write to respond, when we teach students how to respond to literature and write to sources, and also writing to create. This is what we refer to often as process writing, genre characteristics, and so on. And this is something that Into Reading does very well. If you can go ahead and click on the next visual. One of the things that teachers will see in all grades is an opportunity to walk students through the process of how we respond to literature, how we write to sources, what we need to do to analyze a prompt, for example, be able to use our text evidence and write a short constructed response. But on the writing to create side of the thing, yep, go ahead and click on the next one, please. This is going to give our students the opportunity to learn about a variety of different text types, to write within a variety of different genres, including things like personal narratives, different types of letters and correspondence, poetry, research reports, biographies, and more. It's built on a skeleton, as you can see here, of the writing process. So over the course of a module, we'll teach our students how to plan for and pre-write, how to draft over multiple days, revise, edit, and then we'll celebrate and share the hard work of our authors. If you can click on the next slide, please. If that is the skeleton, the meat on the bones, if you will, is ensuring that we teach our students how to do what makes our writing delicious. So we're teaching them about things like genre characteristics and craft moves that authors make. And we use additional high-quality literature that teachers have in their hands that's provided through the resource so that they have access to mentor texts and additional literature supports to be able to dig into, analyze, and then use as the aspiration. But we also, go ahead and click next, can't forget get grammar and mechanics, this is a huge deal. This is the foundational writing piece, if you can imagine that way. And because we know that if we teach these skills in silos, students will not apply. That's real nice if they can get 100% on their proper nouns worksheet, but if they can't turn around and capitalize the proper nouns in their writing, that can be a problem. So we've integrated the grammar directly within the revising and editing lessons where our students can turn around and immediately apply those skills. So again, a couple of things that I just want you to remember about Into Reading. It's all built on that high interest text sets of that carefully curated literature with that explicit foundational skills instruction following that structured literacy pathway, explicit language development, vocabulary development, with plenty of ease of use for teachers. So thanks for this chance to share some information with you.
Mrs. Gerber.
Hi, thanks very much. So this is actually a question for Janine, just in terms of the process of choosing this program. So how many people were involved in the process?
There was anywhere between 38 and 50. We had our program review representatives, which covered pre-K through grade 5. Then we also had our principals and our coaches, and at various stages of the process, it depended what the task was. So if we were going to visit districts, we took our coaches and our principals. Then towards the very end, when we finally got to see some of the programs in action and still had questions about what we saw, we narrowed it down to 2. And that was EL Education's Imagine Learning and Houghton Mifflin Harcourt's Into Reading for K through 5. So because we wanted to take a closer look, we decided that we would ask teacher volunteers. And there were 6 teachers, Christine was one of them, who decided to give this a try in their classrooms. And what they did was they took our current curriculum, and they did not change curriculum, but they looked to see wherever the interactive read aloud was. They used the guidance from the teacher manual and maybe one of our interactive read alouds from Into Reading. And some teachers even took a look at the foundational skills. They did this with both. Then we all got together and we looked at a rubric of 20 indicators based on the science of reading and the things that we wanted to make sure these programs provided us. And based on that and the feedback from each of the 12 teachers, this I am sharing with you tomorrow in terms of the summary of how that looked. They were looking for evidence for each of these indicators. Based on that, we asked the folks that were at this meeting, there were the 12 teachers, 9 principals, and 9 coaches attended this meeting, if they would be able to make the recommendation for which one, based on what we've known now, they would love to adopt based on everything that we've learned from November 4th. So that's how this went. This was the last part of the process, and the teachers felt really good after they saw the difference between both programs, that Into Reading was the one that would best meet the needs of Fairfield curriculum development and implementation.
Okay, so the people on this committee, the teachers and the administrators and the coaches, they all voted?
So during the meeting, I put in the chat a Google form, and it was anonymous. I didn't ask for email addresses or anything like that. 100% of respondents voted for Into Reading, and there were 16 folks at that meeting that responded.
And so the others just didn't vote?
Apparently not.
So in terms of this program, do we know what other districts use this program?
So I did ask Amelia that today, and Amelia shared.
So Connecticut's process of the Right to Read initiative has been a little bit sudden for some districts. And right now there is a waiver process where many districts are asking the state of Connecticut for a second year to implement, not in fall 2023, but in fall 2024. Fairfield is very lucky because you had already budgeted from years ago that you would be adopting a reading program this year. Most other districts did not. So New Haven, we have quite a few districts that will be going with us. When they will be going with us is a little unclear because the state has not released the information on who will be given a waiver to start next year. So everyone's kind of waiting for that information, which probably should be in the next 2 to 3 weeks.
So I guess my question is, what districts have been using this? So I understand, not in Connecticut, but in other states nearby, I don't know, Rhode Island, Massachusetts?
So we went to a district in Rhode Island that has been using the program for the last 2 years. Massachusetts also is a large user of in-shoe reading. They had a process similar to Connecticut's process, but started a year earlier. In-shoe reading came out in 2020, which, as you can imagine, was not a year that many districts ended up adopting programs. So we don't have as many as we would have without the pandemic, but we certainly expect to see a large number of districts coming on board either this fall or next fall as part of Connecticut's program.
So I guess, do we have any specific names of districts that have used them?
Sorry, a few that I know just off the top of my head, and we can get you a more comprehensive list just in surrounding states. Pittsfield, Massachusetts has been using for a couple of years now. New Bedford as well has adopted. Attleboro has gone in. These are Massachusetts towns. A few more have come on. In Long Island, in particular, we've been in Middle Country for a while. Rocky Hill, Central Islip was an early adopter. We just got an agreement from like Brentwood, Levittown, New York as well. So there's quite a few users that are in the Northeast, around the Northeast.
And I guess, what has their feedback been in terms of the efficacy and how the program's been going so far? I mean, I understand.
For sure. Yeah, quite strong for those districts that have been using it for a while. And in fact, I've been involved in a number of districts that have piloted. And one of the things that we do as part of a full year pilot is analyze data. We look at assessment data to look at efficacy. And a lot of districts, and one in particular was in Pennsylvania. It's a little further afield, but East Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania, they had like double digits, growth with their students over the course of that pilot. We also have some information that I know Amelia can share with you too about some efficacy studies that have been done recently, so we can give you that information as well.
I believe I linked that in the document already.
Thank you. And then I guess just in terms of, you said that some schools or classes here did try this out. So was the feedback universally positive from all the different schools? How many schools was it?
I'll look for you, but it might have been 4 or 5 schools. And then another 4 or 5 they trialed, I should say, EL education.
And so, but for this, the feedback was universally positive?
So when we had a meet, like a Google Meet about it, and Janine went through every single section of that rubric, and it was like very clear that this program was favored among the other, like versus the other program. It was like very clear in the beginning of the meeting that was the case.
And then I just had a couple of questions about professional development. So you're saying it's like a 3-year plan for PD, and so who is going to be running the professional development?
So there's going to be a couple of opportunities. HMH will obviously help in that regard in a very, very big way. They will be in the trenches, on site in order to do that in the schools, as well as offer some online opportunities. We also have our partnership with Dr. Gillis and Literacy How. We also have our own professional learning that we provide that I have been doing throughout the course of the year as well.
So, and I know you mentioned at one point there'll be 4 in-person PD sessions. That's per year? Or total over the 3 years? I wasn't sure.
No, that is for the first year.
And it's per school.
Okay,
Right.
and so is that like, would that be one of the full-day PDs, or is that like the Tuesday?
No, those are full-day PDs.
So 4 full-day PD just for this program?
Just for that particular school, yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
And then, I'm sorry, so just in terms of the curriculum writing, which is coming up this summer, correct?
So May 30th is our kickoff, so we're hoping that you will approve our recommendations by May 9th. May 9th is the next meeting, so that we can start to make purchases using that money that I shared with you in a couple of slides earlier, so that we would have the materials that we need in order for our kickoff. And then during that time, we also need to provide some professional learning for our curriculum designers, so this way they know what the programs offer, so this way we can start using them to build our curriculum. So May 30th will be the kickoff, and then we come back in June as soon as school lets out for 2 weeks for K-5, and then in July, pre-K comes on board.
And I know you'd mentioned before in one of the earlier meetings talking about, Fairfielding, whatever program we ended up adopting. So is the curriculum writing part when you envision that Fairfielding taking place? And if so, do you have any sense, based on this program, where you see that going?
I do. I mean, after analyzing this program and taking a look at what we currently are using, I think we can envision relying on about 85 to 90% of what is in these programs. The content in the programs is really pretty stellar, and so we will tweak and supplement in a couple of areas. I envision us doing some tweaking in the area of assessment. There's way too much assessment in any of these boxes that we would not want to use. We want to be very strategic and align it with our universal screeners, see what it has to offer, but it's going to be consistent. So whatever is in our curriculum documents is what everybody will follow. I also think that we may be able to add some additional scaffolds. These programs do a really good job of providing scaffolds for students to give them access to the grade level tasks. We may have some others that we can think of that we will naturally embed. I also think that in terms of enrichment, we didn't really discuss that, but if you look in the teacher manual, there is a 2-page spread for each module, I believe. For students who need more and who need to be challenged, there is an inquiry research project for each of these modules that we can use. We may think of something different that we might want to embed. There's also a Tier 2 resource that is something that we may want to purchase, and I've already budgeted for these things moving into the next couple of years. That matches the content and skills of our K-2 foundational skills here. It's called ECRI, Enhanced Core Reading Instruction, from the University of Oregon. It's been specifically written to align with this program so that it provides explicit, systematic instruction in foundational skills and gives students better access to the core. So in Tier 2, if you teach the lesson the day prior and then the students sit for core, it gives them access and they can participate more fully. So those are some of the things that I'm thinking of, as well as the learning model. Now, Interreading will provide us with 120 minutes, a couple of different versions of how to use that 120 minutes in terms of the components. They also provide us with a 90-minute. They provide us with a couple of different scenarios, but they will work with us through our curriculum design to build that learning model based on what makes sense for Fairfield, because we need to consider everything, our entire schedule, and we need to consider our students.
Just one other question. Curious, you made a few references in the presentation to award-winning texts. Like what, do you have any examples of what those award-winning texts are?
A lot of texts that are familiar to teachers, a couple I can think of off the top of my head, right from second grade. I'm a former second grade teacher. Things like Clark the Shark, Picture Day Perfection, The Kissing Hand is one, Lemonade War in 5th grade is another. There's a lot of really high quality literature. One thing that we can also do is provide you with a complete list of all of the literature at every grade level if you'd like to take a look at the titles as well.
That was one of the things that really impressed our teachers. They really loved the titles. They felt like they can walk into any Barnes & Noble and they can find those books. That was really important to our folks.
And I will say too, that the literature within Interreading is real literature, like you mentioned. You could walk into any Barnes & Noble if you wanted to and pick up some of these texts. They're not what we would say are commissioned text that were written specifically for the program. This is real text, real literature that you would find in the wild, so to speak. Yes.
Mrs. Vitale.
I just have a follow-up just on the Fairfielding part of it. And I absolutely appreciate the need to put, quality resources in the hand of teachers so that they are prepared and there's consistency across the district. I also appreciate, that love of creativity that our teachers bring into the classroom. Sharing a book that they love in a read aloud. And this is more a question for, Ms. Goss in terms of, how much agency do our teachers bring what makes them special and their love of teaching and inspiring learning in our students. Because when I look at this, it's beautiful and there's a lot of great things in it, but it feels a little bit cold without seeing it in action. If you can just speak to that.
Sure, I'm glad you asked that. It's interesting because teachers, because we are building our own curriculum, we're creating a template, we're creating a framework, that will help to provide flexibility, but there will be consistency as well. We start with that backwards design process, and so we look at what summative assessments we want to put in place at the very end of that unit. What do we want students to know and be able to do? But then we back up that process with the learning experiences. It doesn't mean that the teacher has to use that particular read aloud. If they have a read aloud that's aligned with the standards that will get them eventually to that summative task, absolutely. There's new literature that comes into play all the time. So what we're not saying this is the only thing they can use. There is absolutely flexibility. And especially when they get to small group, you're going to see a lot of flexibility as well. I mean, there has to be, right? Because our students are all different and their needs are different. But thank you for asking that. There are certain parts of the curriculum that have to be consistent. There will be those assured learning experiences, but how teachers get there, we will make the suggestions, pull from our primary resource, add some supplemental resources, and then they still have to lesson plan. That's not a lesson plan. They still have to build that lesson plan from our framework.
Thank you.
Mrs. Maxon-Kennelly.
Yes, thank you. I first just wanted to follow up on Mrs. Gerber's question and regarding your experience at Sherman. And I don't know if you were able to dive into this enough to be able to speak to this, but how did you find this pilot to be a different experience from what you had done 2 weeks prior out of the current curriculum?
Sure.
And materials, et cetera?
Yeah, so I feel like this just gives you those resources, and it takes, like, I think someone said, the guesswork out of knowing what you're doing, I guess. So for example, if you know that an objective is whatever the objective is, you're trying to find those resources yourself. So if I'm trying to teach where to put commas, I'm looking for the sentences where to put commas. I'm looking for those worksheets myself where it's there for you, and you're not guessing if, am I teaching this correctly? Is my next door teacher teaching this the way? Are these children getting this? Are these children not? Like, for example, we had the vocabulary PD. I know my team dove right in, and we started teaching vocabulary the way that we interpreted. Janine wanted us to teach vocabulary, but that doesn't mean that every fourth grade teacher is teaching vocabulary that way, where this program has the vocabulary and how you're supposed to teach it and the resources for it. So I think that was the biggest difference. And the kids loved it. They loved the text. Like, we got to read nonfiction text, and we got to read a graphic novel that had to do with the same topic. And that was all part of this curriculum, and they really enjoyed it, and they were very, very engaged in the reading. I didn't get to try the writing. I tried the reading and the grammar.
Thank you very much for that. I'm curious you mentioned that there have been some early users in other districts, and I'm curious, because I'm sure you've been reflective in your own practice, in what ways has what Fairfield is buying changed from what you first were putting out? Like, what are some improvements that we can expect to be benefiting from?
It's a really good question. I think in the past, old programs, it was kind of like you have a copyright. There's a copyright, here's the program, it is what it is. One thing that HMH has done in the last few years, though, that I think is really powerful is we've moved to this model of iterative design. And what that means is we've always been really tied to research. We've always been very aligned to science, but we're also evidence informed. So what that means is we really listen to users. We listen to what district administrators, teachers, community members have to say about what their needs are. And we're able to make iterations on the resource. So one example of this is, you heard me reference the lessons around structured literacy. One of the things that we've done is, for this coming back to school, is realign some of the instruction. Not because that there was anything wrong with what was already in there, but what we heard from teachers was we would like more explicit direction so that any teacher, regardless of level of professional development and training, is able to provide that consistent experience across the board. So that's something that we were able to do, and that's rolling out this new series of lesson slides, these new teacher notes that give give that really tightly aligned, very, very explicit feedback with all of the routines in place and all of that. So that's just one recent example of this. We're constantly taking feedback. We're using that to grow on the program, and a lot of that is being turned around and made available to teachers instantly right through our digital platform, which is called HMH Ed, where teachers can access a lot of the teaching tools and materials to be able to work in the classroom.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Just two more questions, and then the rest I'll submit on the Google form. But we have gotten some questions regarding how much of this involves screen time. And I was just hoping K through 5, if you could speak to that.
I sure will. So we are not purchasing part of the digital component for that reason. It's called Waggle, and we are not purchasing that for students to use. But students will have access to watch videos that introduce the modules, for example. They can listen to stories. When you think about our kindergartners and first graders, when they go off to do reading, there can be a center and they can listen to stories, for example, but it is not going to be a focus by any means.
And could you describe the nature of the videos that we might be using?
Sure, there's a couple of different types. One is a type of video at the beginning of a module. It's called a Get Curious video. It's about 2 minutes in length that teachers can use to introduce the concept, the topic, the content area that's being studied. It just serves as a conversation spark. It's an opportunity for some oral language development. Another type of video is specific to kindergarten and grade 1. It's something called the Alpha Friends. So it's another additional support for teaching of alphabet knowledge and building connection between sound and symbol. Puts some of those sound and symbols to songs and movement, because one of the things we know, even though it's engaging, yes, it's fun, yes, it's cute, but there's brain research that shows the importance of music on learning retention. And so one of the ways that we're doing that is through these little Alpha Friends videos too. So that's an example of 2.
So those sound mostly like whole class
Correct.
videos.
So those are things that teachers would show in class during their instructional time, exactly.
Thank you.
And they can also be used at home. So families will have access. So if they say, what did you do today in school? Families can actually just log on and they can see what's happening in the module.
Is there going to be, I hadn't planned this question, but is there a place, like, I don't know, a classroom teacher newsletter or whatever, where they're going to know how to access when? I'm not going to trust that most kindergartners, first graders could accurately describe where mom or dad could get the video.
That's a great follow-up question. So at the beginning of every module in every grade level, there is a parent-family letter that goes home. It's available in 10 different languages. And not only does it explain what they are being taught, but also gives parents some suggestions for things that they can do at home to extend their learning. In addition to that, teachers or families and caregivers have access to a piece that's called the Family Room. It lives online in HMH Ed through the student login, and it provides families with some of that additional support. How do I navigate? How do I find the content I'm looking for? What is, and even just some basic things, what do I do if my child says I'm bored? Here, different types of help and support for families and caregivers right online as well.
Thank you. And then my last question. I know back in December, I think, our discussion had been about K through 8. And the 6 through 8 piece of this, I know, had prompted us to switch gears at one point, and now it's left out entirely. What's going on with that?
For now, we're still exploring. And the reason we're still exploring is because there is a 612 component to this. It's called Into Literature. And so we are currently making plans to work with middle school teachers and administrators to take a look at those materials to see if there are any parts of those materials that we can use to inform our curriculum writing. Because again, we're looking for alignment. We want to see if there's anything missing in terms of the resources that they need. And then we'll take it from there and we'll keep you informed. But we are currently exploring. We did take a look at a couple of programs at the middle school level, and I think their top choice at the time was EL education, and so again, that rose to the top. This came in late because this was added to the list late, and so middle school at that time did not get a chance to take a look. So we are currently making plans to explore that.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Go ahead. Mrs. Guernsey.
I have a number of questions that I would love to submit in the Google form, but one question for today, if you could just touch upon what might happen if instead of implementing this across our elementary schools in full if we were to roll out the program to say K1 or K2 through 2. What could that look like and why that might be beneficial?
It actually would not. And the reason it would not be beneficial is because we are creating curriculum that is based on these resources. And so if we go to implement in 24-25, the teachers won't have the materials that they need to support the implementation of the curriculum. So we're sticking with the district improvement plan's timeline. Curriculum needs to be done by November, to be presented to you this November, so that you can improve it hopefully in December. And then starting in January is when we start PD for the 24-25 implementation. If we don't do that, they'll have curriculum, but they won't have resources.
Thank you. I mean, just in the interest of time here, I know we have a packed agenda, so I'll submit the rest of my questions electronically.
Thank you. I did have one last slide just to show you the timeline in a visual. So I do want you to know that, so here we are, obviously April 25th. We're hoping and anticipating that you will approve the programs we've recommended and have worked so hard to vet on May 9th at your meeting. So this way, beginning on May 10th, we can start to purchase those core materials and make a plan for our kickoff, which is on May 30th. It's a full day PD day where we will have curriculum designers in the room from pre-K through grade 12 because of that alignment piece for professional learning and to start taking a look at the vision of the graduate as well as essential questions and start mapping those out as well as looking at standards so that by October 30th, curriculum writing is complete. And then we present to you in November for hopefully approval in December. So that's that timeline. I mean, I am absolutely thrilled that we are here. I can't believe we started this in November. I really think that we did a good job vetting all of this. You should also know that we have taken a look at our current curriculum and current practices. We took a look at phonics, we took a look at phonological awareness, phonemic awareness, as well as writing. We'll use what we have explored and learned that we want to make sure we embed in our new curriculum. And we, these opportunities will help increase the articulation between our 5th and 6th grades, as well as 8th and 9th. So this is a very exciting time for Fairfield, and I thank you so much. I know this was long, but it needed to be thorough. This is really, really important, and I look forward to continued conversations. Thank you.
I'll keep it brief just because in the essence of time that we have here while we have our guests. Thank you so much for being here. One piece, I just want to make sure I heard you correctly. Did you say that the first half of the next year is spent in review of the previous year?
Not fully half. At the beginning of the year, probably the first 4 modules or so, especially in first grade, we're going to spend time reviewing and making sure that there's mastery on some of those early skills. And when I say early skills, I mean things like ensuring that students have that mastery of those connections between consonants, vowels, learning their early blending skills, learning things like long vowels and how those are different from short vowels, early digraphs. And when I say digraph, I mean things like the TH sound, CHSHW, those kinds of things. Those are kinds of things that we build on over the full year in kindergarten. We begin the year in first grade with that, then we begin to add on. And this kind of review type model where we spend a couple of modules at the beginning of each successive year really ensures that we're not losing any students through the gaps. We're making sure that there's kind of that slight overlap so that we're ensuring that students pick up on all of those important skills before moving on to greater skills. So that if we have students that maybe didn't understand a concept in grade 1, for example, they have an opportunity to revisit in grade 2 before continuing to add on and build.
But we will have new universal screeners in place. We will have new decision trees, diagnostics, making sure that we know every student's instructional focus in kindergarten through grade 5 so that we can tailor that if that's not what students need. We have the resources to ramp it up.
And then lastly, I know that in the February presentation, I had asked for some specific things, so I'll put those in the chart because I didn't see them in this presentation in terms of the goals and the outcomes that you were hoping for, unless we're going to be relying on the district improvement plan for that as the metrics of our success in implementation of this. And then also we didn't talk too much about writing today. I know I've been asking for a detailed explanation of how this is going to be different or similar in terms of time, how, process, and all of that. So I'll be looking for that for by next meeting that we have that. So other than that, those are mine. All right, well, thank you so much for the presentation, and you're going to email the Google Doc to the board tonight, so people, and is there, I guess, we're not meeting, you're not going to go over that until May 9th. No, May 23rd, we're adopting this, right? Go ahead.
Are these resources been shared with parents or available for parents to take a look at? Or, you know, a greater population of teachers who haven't maybe seen them? I mean,
We gave families digital access, I believe, through the newsletter a few weeks ago, so they do have access to everything that you see here and then some.
But if somebody, you know, I think there's something, maybe it's just me, of just being able to have, you know, the book in hand, to be able just to flip through the pages.
Well, I have them here. I'll have them in my office,
Okay.
and families can absolutely stop by to take a look.
So, Ms. Gauss, by which time would you like board members to ensure that they have their questions submitted to you so that you have time enough to answer them?
So just a few days at least before May 9th.
Okay.
So this way, I have enough time, unless there's 350 questions.
Right.
And I'll need them prior, but I'll work on it as we go. I'll
Okay.
take a look every day.
All right, thank you. So
Okay.
in other words, if you put the questions in on Monday, you may not have your answer on Tuesday.
Depends on how many there are. I'm going to try my best.
All right, thank you very much. I'm not looking at anyone. Hello.
So the one thing I just want to add, I think there was a powerful statement made by one of our teachers that I think kind of gets overlooked, and she used the word guesswork. And I think that's a pretty powerful statement coming from an educator in one of our schools, that this takes the guesswork out of it. I also think that we need to start looking at this as an evolution. I had this conversation with one of our elementary principals about where we're at today and where we were almost 11 years ago when the last curriculum revision was done, and how things have evolved over that time period to get us to where we are today in terms of our ELA instruction. I think this now embarks on a new chapter that will evolve over the next 10 years. But I think that, you know, there is some unknowns for some folks and what this will bring. But I also think there's a lot of opportunity here as well that we need to look forward to, and how this curriculum that our folks are going to embark upon writing over the next 6 months, and what that will turn into over the next decade, and how that will impact student learning across Fairfield.
Thank you, Mr. Testani. And thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. All right. Old business, adoption of policy 6142.101, student nutrition and physical activity. The recommended motion that the Board of Education adopt policy 6142.101, student nutrition and physical activity. Can I get a motion, please? Mrs. Maxon Kennelly, second, please. Mrs. Gerber. Any discussion? Mrs. Maxon Kennelly?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to amend. If everyone could turn to page B. Sorry? From our March 14th meeting, this was enclosure number 3. Can I go ahead? Okay. It was not in tonight's because it was in our last meeting, and you're supposed to have one with you. Yeah. So my motion is on the final red bullet point to add after the word discipline on the third line, during the school day. Yep.
Second, Mr. Asa.
So the reason for the amendment, again, this is a reflection of the memo that we have already received as a full board regarding the question that Mr. Asa and myself had raised regarding the latitude to coaches, among other things. And so this memo is at the recommendation of Mr. Goodson. So that's all that's behind the memo. Excuse me, the amendment.
So I just want to make sure I'm understanding the change would be reflective of is that physical activity outside of the school day could be used as a form of discipline.
Of supportive instruction
But that
for
is what the
improved
motion-
performance.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any discussion on the amendment? All right. Oh, sorry, Ms. Gernst, I didn't see you.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure that I support that. I don't believe in, my personal philosophy is against discipline as a part of physical education in or outside of the school. So I don't know, we didn't really go into that too far in policy, so I'm uncomfortable with that.
Anyone else? Mr. Issa?
Just to be clear, Ms. Guernsey, so when I brought this up at the last meeting, it was specific to sporting and coaching. And so I just want to be clear, is what you're saying, that, or what I was saying was if a coach deems that students or their players are not acting within what they're being told or coached, and they want to be able to make them do laps, that was the just behind it. So you're against that?
Yes, I am.
Anyone else? Okay, I will take it to the public. Anyone who wishes to make a public comment on this item, come forward. On the amendment. All right. If not, we'll take it back. What? Well, all right, but take it back to the board. All in favor of the amendment? All right, Mrs. Ritelli, Mrs. Vitale, Mrs. Gerber, Mrs. Kelly, Mr. Peterson, Mrs. Maxon-Cannelli, Mr. Asa, in favor? Opposed? Mrs. Guernsey, Mrs. Jacobson. Amendment passes 7-2. All right, back to the main motion as amendment.
So aside from that, I received no other questions, so I don't know if there are any, but I didn't get any.
All right, anyone have any discussion? Nope. All right, public, any comment? All right, back to the board. All in favor of the policy? Policy passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, approval of the healthy food certification for the 2023-2024 school year. Mrs. Laborious, this is something that we do every year. I don't know if anyone has any questions. Otherwise, if I would ask someone who would like to waive
I
the
would like
reading.
to waive.
Thank you. Any objection to the waive? Any questions? Sure. All right. Yes. Mrs. Maxon-Cannelli makes a motion. Second, please, Mrs. Gerber. The recommended motion for the food options and A2 for the combined food and beverage exemptions. Any discussion? No. Public comment? No. Take it back to the board. All in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Approval of RLMS roof replacement project number 051-0152RR. Recommended motion that the Board of Education accept RLMS replacement project number 051-1052RR as complete. Mrs. Gerber. Seconded by Mr. Peterson. Thank you. Mr. Papa George, any discussion or any items on this?
Sorry, no, we recommend that the board accept this project as complete.
Okay. All right, wait. Okay, all right. Any questions by the board? No, we'll vote. All in favor? Oh, sorry. They're making fun of me for asking the public. Anyone in the public want to talk about the roof project? Okay. All in favor? Right, Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Discussion and possible action on custodian successor collective bargaining and agreement. Recommended motion that the Fairfield Board of Education hereby moves to provide funding for and to otherwise approve the tentative agreement for a successor collective bargaining agreement with the Custodians Union for the period of July 1, 2022 through June 30th, 2025. The board further delegates to the chair the authority to execute the final contract document on behalf of the board. Can I get a motion, please? Mrs. Rotelli, seconded by Mr. Asa. Discussion. Public comment. Back to the board. All in favor? Motion passes unanimously. First reading of policies. First reading of policy 6148, improve completion rates of the free application for federal student financial aid. Mrs. Maxon Cannelli?
Yeah, so this one's, I think, fairly straightforward. This is the recommended language of staff. Policy was fine with it. I don't know if there are any questions or if you'd like to get them to me prior to the next meeting.
No? Okay, moving on. First reading of policy 4118.6, 42.18.6, cell phone use. Mrs. Maxon Cannelli?
Once again, this staff came to us looking to update this language. We actually went through a few different drafts, but ultimately this is what staff is asking us to do, and this is what policy signed off on. Again, I don't think anything especially controversial, but.
Oh, Mrs. Gerber?
Hi, I'm just curious, just a technical thing. So you've crossed out cell phone use, and so it now says cellular telephone, but a lot of places in the policy, you cross out cellular and have cell. I just thought that was kind of odd that it would be different, right? I mean, I was just curious if there was some rationale behind that.
No, not from the part of policy committee. We never even discussed it, nor did we pick up on it. So we can blame Mrs. Laborious, but somehow this is what you wanted. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little punchy. But no, you're absolutely, I'm observing the same thing as I look right now, and I have nothing to say. So.
Sorry, Mr. Peterson.
Thanks. Very briefly, I may have more comments on this, but the one thing that I noticed in a quick read-through is in number 1 under cell phone / communication device use, talking about district communication devices that are provided for district business, it says district provided telephone is intended for business calls only, but nobody uses their cell phone for telephone calls anymore. We use it for other purposes. I don't know whether that's specific enough or vague enough for the use of this policy. Texting wouldn't fall into that category.
Right. I'm going to ask Ms. Laborious. She still here? Yes. I'm going to ask Ms. Laborious to come up because, again, this was the recommendation from staff. I acknowledge your point. And actually, we had quite a bit of discussion in policy regarding the various ways that this is used. And so I don't want to speak out of turn on this.
No, that's a good point, and that's accurate. It's an older policy that this was taken from an oversight, so it should just be for calls or, yeah.
Yeah, that was the only thing that jumped out at me about this.
So in other words, Ms. Laborious, if next meeting, if we amended it to be for business only, you would be comfortable with that as an amendment?
Yes, and thank you for pointing that out.
Okay. First reading of policy 6161, instructional resources.
Thank you. So this one, again, thank you for the board for understanding why this is not on for a vote this meeting. We had presented this back in March, and based on the feedback, I put it back on the policy agenda, which fortunately the way the calendar worked is that we had 2 meetings to take a shot at trying to improve this based solely on the informal discussion that was at the board table in March. And so this is ultimately what the policy committee wrestled with and arrived at, is the language you see before you. And so I welcome questions and discussion.
Mr. Asa.
Yeah, just curious, when this came out of policy this time, were all 3 of you in agreement on what's put forth in front of us today?
With varying degrees of enthusiasm, yes.
Okay, and I believe, members of the public or maybe the teachers union or anybody were at those meetings as well. So was that comment taken into consideration, if any?
Very much so. And now, again, I don't think the new union president would in any way want his words to be construed as he had in-depth discussions with every staff member and that his comments were a reflection of that. So understanding that when I give this answer, that in speaking for himself, who he also happens to be an English teacher, he understood what the intent of policy was. He was very, very point blank invited to object to what we were doing, which I thought was a great way to test it, and he did not. If either Mrs. Guernsey or Mrs. Jacobson think I have mischaracterized that, I would welcome their input, but at the end of it, he understood what we were looking to do, and he was fine. He supported what we were aiming for in terms of consistency and the means of doing so.
Thank you.
Mrs. Guernsey.
Yes, I'd love to just respond to Mr. Ace's question. And in fact, I did not agree with this policy. I voted for it only because I preferred it over the previous version, but I don't support it in its current form. And it's really based on the section Roman numeral 2 around trade books. It's problematic to me that we would demand a finite number of trade books available for whole class instruction. I can understand how the our FEA group was supporting us listing this in a curriculum document, but I think that it's my impression that we could get in trouble moving forward with trying to approve every trade book. That's something that makes me uncomfortable, especially as we're talking about the elementary curriculum. I mean, we've heard a lot from the high school curriculum, but I mean, this box is filled with trade books, and we talked today about how new literature is available all the time and that teachers would have the agency to choose them, and that would be in fact in conflict with this policy from my understanding. So that language is problematic for me, and just wanted to give you the background on what happened in policy and where I am with that.
Mrs. Maxon-Kelly?
As I said, varying degrees of enthusiasm, which didn't fully capture, but I, expected Mrs. Guernsey to speak to express her own views. I didn't want to carry her water for her. The one thing part of this policy that I would like to point out is Roman numeral 3, and just to be aware that there are plenty of materials that are also called trade books, which we would not be voted on, which would not be included in curriculum documents. So by no means is Roman numeral 2 all-encompassing. Again, I acknowledge Mrs. Guernsey's concern. We had a very robust discussion over the course of 2 policy meetings, but this is what we ended up with. And I do certainly agree with Mrs. Guernsey that this was, I'm glad that it came back to us. Sometimes that is of value with policy when we're trying to figure something out, that we brought it to the full board. The feedback was helpful, the questions were helpful, and I do think we've arrived at a vastly improved policy. And so, of course, this is for a first read. Again, still welcome comments, but the vote will be for the next meeting.
Mrs. Vitale.
Hi, thank you for revisiting this. I appreciate the revisions that were made. I still have concerns. I share some of Mrs. Guernsey's concerns about the trade book language, just for the gray area that it potentially represents of what trade book falls under number 3, what falls under number 2. It could be open to different interpretations. And I think it puts it on administration to kind of decipher that, which is fine, but if it's in the policy, it could be coming back to the board. And given how full our agendas are and how frequently we meet, I could just see problems arising there. But I do very much appreciate the conversation about, resources that are expected to be assured experiences amongst all of our students. So if there are trade books that are specific, that the expectation is that this book will be read by every student in every section of a particular course, then I understand having it in the curriculum documents. So I'm looking probably to tweak language in this section just to maybe give some clarity on that, while also still giving flexibility for if a teacher wants to read, and I don't know if this isn't going to be allowed or supported at the elementary school level. I know when my kids were in elementary school, a teacher read a novel over the course of weeks as a read aloud. Would that need to be included in the curriculum documents or not? And I'm not asking you to answer that question, but I just, could see that potentially coming up and there being that little bit of questioning. So that's where I am right now with this policy, but I do appreciate you taking it back, and I'll be better about getting you word to any amendment.
Mr. Issa.
Thank you, Mrs. Vitale. Could I just ask that if you are that to the chair, that if that does come in advance of the next meeting, if that could be shared like we generally do with amendments, that would be really helpful. Just so in case I have any questions, I can be prepared at the meeting.
Absolutely. Being that we will be, I'm assuming, unless I hear from the chair or the policy chair that they're going to be revisiting it in committee, I will absolutely be getting an amendment to the board beforehand.
So can I just ask a clarifying question of you?
You sure can.
Just so I'm understanding what you're contemplating, it would be around providing for that specificity in the curriculum document around assured experiences, but not necessarily every single book being in there. Is that
right? If we expect that everyone's going to read The Great Gatsby in high school, that at a certain grade level, then that would be as part of the curriculum documents, and I would be more comfortable with that because that's what we're expecting. But I also appreciate that they're similar to my comments that teachers may take a different approach, and as long as they're meeting the standards outlined in the curriculum documents, or there might be different ways of getting there. There might be more than one novel in order to dive into a particular theme.
James behind you. So I didn't know if you wanted to lend any context.
I'm happy. I'm just telling you where I am.
Yeah. I think he can provide some. I just saw him back there making a lot of motions.
So we would agree an assured experience that is a trade book would be in the curriculum document, but the Roman numeral 2 is for whole class instruction only. So the stuff that happens in small groups and so forth would not be things that we would consider whole class instruction within the document, but we also plan on providing a robust list of resources for teachers. One of the things that does come up in English, I would say, mostly, is that we want to make sure that the experiences are happening within classes and not classes that lead to other classes, so that there's an expectation that when students are in English 9, for example, if it's a whole class, it's done, but also that it's not going to be repeated in English 10 with those standards.
I appreciate that, but I go back and forth of wondering if that is something that could be addressed by you, like just administration in terms of through the administrative regs, or just the department review of what books are going to be read, if there wants to be any variability of what that assured experience is year from year.
Sure, we can do that. And when you say by me, we plan on putting that robust list in the document so that teachers are aware that these are the ones that are connected to this course versus other ones within the room, or other ones within the book room, in order to be able to use for those classes. And of course, if there are students who require a supplementary material because something doesn't fit, we also have Roman numeral 3 for that purpose.
So would they be there's 2 levels, it sounds like. There's going to be those assured experiences, and then there's going to be suggested resources that teachers could potentially use. For the assured experiences, that would protect or address your point of making sure that 10th graders aren't reading something that they already read in 9th grade.
Yes.
All right. I'm not putting forth an amendment right now. I'm just telling you that I just want make sure that this policy has clarity for staff on how to proceed. maybe I'm going to ask you about the read aloud. A fourth grader reads Because of Winn-Dixie over the course of the entire class, over the course of however many weeks it takes to read. Would that be okay, or would it need to be in the curriculum documents, and would every fourth grade class need to do that? Because the way this policy reads right now, you can make the argument that it probably the whole class is being read that book. Should it be approved by the board or not? That's
So the answer, and I think Ms. Goss touched on this in the other presentation, the read alouds many times come from the classroom libraries, which are exempt in number 3 with ancillary materials, and teachers pick them many times based on ancillary materials of what they need within their classrooms each day. So the answer is no to your question of if they need approval or if they're going to be written in documents, because they change so often with the classroom libraries as well.
Thank you.
Mrs. Gerber, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I did. I appreciate the work that the policy committee's done on this, and I definitely like this better than the last policy, but I still do have some concerns. I just worry about perhaps some unforeseen consequences to some of the wording in this, so I would be interested in hearing what the amendment would sound like.
Mr. Peterson?
Hi, thank you. I just want to signal that I'm in favor of the policy as revised. I was going to have a couple of textual issues that you have addressed in this. I think this far more streamlined, and I appreciate it. I also want to say that I appreciate some time that Dr. Zavjancic and I spent together discussing the origins and impetus of this policy, and I come away from that meeting. I was skeptical, was concerned a month ago. Having given this a lot of thought, and thanks to our meeting time, I think I see the crucial need for that common foundational experience, and I see this policy as a way forward in that direction. I just want to say that I think I've changed my mind more toward the positive on this in the past month.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Mr. Asa?
Yeah, Dr. Zavjancic. So would you say, as it's written now, this meets kind of the needs of what you were looking for or coming to policy and to the board for guidance before you get into this work?
Yeah, and so the answer is yes to that, and it also, I think, gives all of the parties involved, including the board, staff, and so forth, a clear indication of what a textbook is as well, and what the assured experiences are moving forward within curriculum documents and what's expected within those documents before they get to you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Gerber?
So just to be clear, this policy as it's written now would require the board to approve every book that is part of, that's part of the whole class. So if an entire class, if an entire section is reading a certain book or books, all of those books would need to be approved by the Board of Education.
If it were a textbook, yes. If it were a trade book, no. It would, we'd add a resource list into the curriculum document, so it would not require a separate vote. If that's what you're asking, the curriculum would be approved as a result of what was in there. If I can give an example to the last new course that was proposed last year, which was the African American Latino Studies, we did a similar process. I think we gave a 2-page document of all the resources that would be used within that class, and it was approved as a result of the implementation of that curriculum.
So I guess my concern, and I did bring this up at the last meeting, would just be what would happen if a board member, and I'm not saying anyone at this board at this time, but a board member at some point decided that they didn't like a title or titles in that list. Would they be able to amend it to remove those books from that list?
I guess your question is, can they amend a curriculum document at the board table? I don't have an answer to that right now. I have put it out for an answer. I'd imagine it would be an up or down vote, but I am getting clarification on that.
Thank you.
Mrs. Maxon-Kennelly?
Yeah, that was a question I had posed to Dr. Zavjancic explicitly with the phrase of please be ready with the answer to this question, because exactly what would be the process from here. And the understanding that we thought was going to be correct, but we'll get the correct answer, is that I suppose anyone, if they get enough people, can put anything on as an agenda item. But in this case, it wouldn't be the book, it would be the curriculum document, because there's nothing in the policy that would allow for the individual vote. It's approved as part of the curriculum document. And so, but to that point, any future board could also amend this policy and make it so that there's an individual vote on every. So just in terms of fears of future boards, this is tame by comparison to what a feared board could possibly do. So this ensures the consistency. And actually, I want to speak to something that Mrs. Vitale said on the topic of consistency, where you reference the idea of leaving it to administration to do what we want as the spirit of this. That's exactly what we did 11 years ago, and it fell apart. And it brings us to the position where we are right now, where we tried to have a almost verbal agreement with the leadership, administrative leadership, about the desire for more assured experience, for more canon. And that sense has fallen away and has brought us to a more, and again, I am not saying that any individual teacher is not doing a wonderful job in the classroom, but the sophomore year teacher being able to count on what the freshman year teacher has done and up and down the road in terms of alignment is not there, and it is not assured to be there when you're a new teacher coming into the district. You have a lot of latitude with what you can be doing, and you don't have as well a curriculum document that would be guiding you, which is one of the first things a new teacher would ask for, is what am I teaching and what am I expected to do? And this would provide that in a far more helpful fashion. Actually, quite frankly, very similar to what we heard in this part of that ELA presentation for elementary school, of how am I supposed to do? What are the resources that I'm supposed to be used to be achieving this curriculum? And this would be making that more formal, no matter who was the leadership or no matter who was coming in as new teachers. But I'm not looking to keep making the argument now. Obviously, that'll be as part of the vote, but I did want to respond to those 2 points.
Just follow. And I absolutely agree with you, and I hear you on that. And my comment was more in terms of this is going to be the 9th grade book. 10th grade teachers should know that they should not be reading this book because it was addressed in 9th grade, and whether or not it needs to be in the policy or just through administration in the department. But I hear you in putting in policy in terms of solidifies it more. But I share the concerns. I'm waiting for that answer to that question in terms of the trade books are in the policy, a teacher makes it through, he or she wants to read a novella at the end of the year, has time, I'm making things up here, and does it have to come to the full board or not?
So that was one of my questions too when we were in policy committee, is that we don't do curriculum update. It's like every 10 years. So that list will be the list for a decade, right? Unless there's a process or a mechanism by which a new list would become refreshed. So you are locking in a decade at least of a list. So that is a question. That is what it is.
We are looking at the review cycle. We do think that the status update is also a perfect time to see how implementation went, to see how the professional development went, to see how the curriculum has been implemented and if it's working, and then to be able to come forward, as we did tonight, with a status review, which is currently 5 years, to be able to say, yeah, this was implemented well, it wasn't, and here's some changes we're proposing to what's going on.
Right. So at an update would be the only time that you'd be able to do it. Mrs. Guernsey.
I just wanted to clarify that my concern wasn't with the assured experiences. Those books, I think that makes sense to be in this policy, and I would support that. It's really just this list of, which Mr. Zavajan described as a finite list. So I would be interested more in seeing a recommended list with the ability of teachers to work with the administrators to add to that if new publications were available or whatever. and that wouldn't have to come back to the board. I just, I don't see how that provides enough flexibility and also puts so much onus on us. So that was the specific part that I was having trouble with, not the assured content area, which I support.
Mrs. Maxon-Kennelly.
Sorry, one final point. I think at this point, probably it's best that any amendments come to the full board, but I would be remiss if I didn't point out that policy does have a meeting next week, so that if somebody had nothing better to do than to craft this really quickly, I suppose it's something we could look at, but I would have to know that by Thursday in order to be able to put it on the agenda, but I'm just pointing that out. Not that it has to, it can just go to the next full board meeting, but just putting that out there.
Hopefully by then we can have an answer to our question. I mean, if I'm going by the technical nature of our charge, it's to approve curriculum, not amend. So it seems to me it would, on the surface of the charge, is an up or down vote. You could, if you don't like the list, you can vote no on the curriculum, but not get into, we'll take that off, put that on. But I'll look for a better person than me to answer the question, but that's my instinct. All right, so as Mrs. Maxon-Kennelly asked, if you do have language, if you could please be helpful to have it for Tuesday, Jen, probably, for the meeting, if possible.
Well, I would have to know by Thursday that someone was submitting it, because I don't even have it as an agenda item for next Tuesday. So, and I'm not planning to, because we have a very
So
full
we'll just
agenda,
handle-
but I'm willing to do it if someone's ready by this Thursday.
All right, and if not, we'll just handle it at the May 9th meeting. Okay. Appreciate it. Thank you. All right, moving on. First reading of the ed specifications for roof projects. E1, first reading of McKinley roof project ed specs. Mr. Papa George.
So you have before you your standard one-page ed spec for our roofs. 20-year with warranty, edge to edge. If there's any specific questions, be happy to answer them.
Mrs. Vitale.
Cold, hot,
Cold applied.
and promise? Or should we make, give you a little bit of wiggle room on this so you don't have to be,
We intend to do a cold apply roof. We're not foreseeing any
Okay.
issues that will arise that require us to switch to a hot applied.
All right.
Mr. Issa.
Are we on E1 and E2? Okay. So for Holland Hill, because I know the question is going to come up from or there's got to be public wondering. We just completed a major renovation addition on that building. Why are we doing this now?
So if you remember, there was another phase to the Holland, sorry, I'm thinking Sherman, I apologize. Holland Hill, we did just complete the renovation and addition. The existing building roof was not part of that project. So that's why we are now, because there was still life in the warranty during that construction project.
So I just want to bring it up to the board now and for future boards. I think that there's been many times over the years that we have been penny wise and pound foolish. And we are doing the roof at Riverfield, which was done in 2015 now, because it's leaking. We're doing, that wasn't done as part of it. And we're making these little savings, right, when we're doing a project because the roof has 5 more years, in air quotes, left on it. But then we run into problems. And I think in the future, as we move forward, we need to really look at this, and we really need to empower our building committees. And I don't know what the process is, because there is a building committee and they have a budget and there's value engineering and everything like that. But I think it's something we really need to be cognizant of moving forward, that we just did a major project at Holland Hill, and no one will convince me that we couldn't have done this cheaper by doing it then. And that's not directed at you. It's just a general comment that I think we need to just consider that moving forward on projects.
Absolutely.
Mrs. Vitale.
Well, then I guess just a memo to us that it has to go in the ed spec, that we're just going to, replace the full roof.
It's something that we will need to talk about and how to put it in the ed spec, absolutely.
and budget for it in the ed spec so it doesn't fall on the building committee.
Mr. Peterson.
Just to observe very quickly, whenever I've been before the Board of Finance talking about a roof project, they have always asked, why wasn't this done at the same time as the renovation? Every time.
Hopefully the increase in price will be okay. Just saying.
But and of course,
At the same time.
and of course,
that they asked the question. Did you have something else?
well, and it's also now that we just have these patchwork roofs that
Totally
we
understand.
kind of.
I appreciate the thought, Mr. Issa. I agree with you. It's probably a good idea for us to look at that going forward. All right. Thank you, Mr. Papa George. All right. We got 20 minutes, folks, and quite a bit to get through here. So discussion and possible action on FEMA reimbursement. Would anyone like to waive the reading, or should you want, Mr. Peterson, thank you. Waive objections to the waiving of the reading? Thank you. All right, discussion. So, move. Motion. Mrs. Vitale, second. Mrs. Gerber. Do you want to speak to this item for a second? The FEMA reimbursement and what we're going to be doing and having a chat?
So the hope is once funds are secured from the pass-through through the town of the FEMA reimbursement dollars, we will be looking to upgrade some security measures throughout the district. This will include camera systems, servers, and all that encompasses some of the eyes in the sky, so to speak, that keeps our buildings safe, where we can provide more oversight in any and updates in new technology, since these systems have been installed probably several years ago.
Thank you. So at this point, this is recollective, but somewhat different from during the COVID times when we worked with the other town bodies in terms of funding. So this really, at this point, is just giving Mr. Testani and myself the authority to have those conversations with the First Selectman and Board for Finance. And then if anything final would come back to the board as well as updates. So any discussion, questions? No? Okay. Any public comment on this? No? All right, back to the board. All in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Approval of the minutes. That the Board of Education approve the March 13th, 2023 BOE regular meeting minutes and the March 29th, 2023 BOE special meeting minutes. Can I get a motion, please? Mr. Peterson, seconded by Mrs. Gerber. Any discussion? Public comment? Back to the body. All in favor? All in favor. Motion passes unanimously. Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. Okay. Abstentions? Mrs. Ritelli? Thank you. Got it? Okay. Superintendent report?
Thank you. The 23-24 budget update, we're hoping Monday. It'll get final approval from the RTM. As everyone is aware, the budget has been approved thus far by the Board of Education, Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance. Board of Finance approved the original budget that was approved by the Board of Education with a $500,000 reduction that was made at the Board of Selectmen level. So I believe that Monday it will be passed and we will have our adopted budget for 23-24. A couple of highlights, just some of the bright spots throughout the district. Just a announcement that our Fairfield Woods band director, Jeffrey DeRozier, has been awarded a fellowship from the Fund for Teachers to study with professional musicians this summer, both stateside and in Ireland. Just a big congratulations to Ludlow Junior Sophia Dillabaugh on earning the prestigious Gold Congressional Award. Sophia will be honored by members of the U.S. Congress in Washington, D.C. in June. Sophia partnered with Principal Meg Tiley and completed 400 hours across different areas to meet her goals. It was mentioned in the board representative report, but I do want to acknowledge that the Ludlow High School students who prepared that impressive tasting menu last month to demonstrate their culinary skills and the partnership with Whidson's to bring seasonally available local sourced produce to Fairfield Public Schools cafeteria. And the teacher that leads that group, Melanie Karmazin, it was an amazing event. I think everyone who was there can attest that the food delicacies that these kids are producing are outstanding, and would be welcomed in any restaurant here in Fairfield County. So I just do want to acknowledge that. We did, and we've had, and Tomlinson was the most recent group that enjoyed a special mobile classroom visit that we set up with the Advanced Manufacturing mobile bus from Goodwin University. That will provide experiences at all three of our middle schools. It's a great opportunity for kids to be exposed to some careers in the area of advanced manufacturing. So we're excited, and I think the students really enjoyed that visit a couple of weeks ago at Tomlinson. Just a quick update on what has been, I'm sure, well publicized in email, the Fairfield Ludlow High School scoreboard. They have dug and will be pouring footings in the next couple of days. There was a report, of course, on April 18th that the scoreboard that was removed but placed on the ground so that it is operable for at least the spring season was not working. Mr. Papa George went out and investigated. It was just a minor issue with the range of the wireless controller, so that has been addressed. The new board manufacturing has begun. The expected shipment date is May 19th. The steel structure is in production and expected to be in place before the arrival on the 19th. And it's going to be an amazing project once it's completed. Thank you. Yes, pom-poms and everything else. Just want to say that we will be rolling out on Monday, the first rollout of 5 schools utilizing our Parent Square communication platform. That will be at Fairfield Ward High School, Holland Hill, Mill Hill, McKinley, and Tomlinson Middle School. Principal Fermato over at Tomlinson has already begun utilizing the platform and has found it extremely useful in being able to provide information in a much more seamless way to his school community. So we're happy about that. Congratulations to Holland Hill Principal Molly Farrell on receiving the Dawn Hotsprung Outstanding Elementary Principal Award. This award was named in the honor of Sandy Hook's principal. Big shout out to Mill Hill Elementary School, has been named a Green Ribbon School by the U.S. Department of Education. Mill Hill was chosen for their innovative efforts to reduce environmental impact and utility costs, improve health and wellness, and ensure effective sustainability education. So great job over at Mill Hill by everyone involved. And as everyone is aware, this morning we had a great visit from Connecticut Commissioner of Education, Charlene Russell Tucker, at McKinley School. The commissioner was quite impressed by our students, especially the Early Literacy Academy and some of the students that were able to share their feelings about the education and the environment at McKinley. So thank you for all the board members who were able to attend and the legislators who also took the opportunity to visit McKinley today. Quick update on the current 4th graders taking 5th grade math. We have communicated with all the parents the intention of having 2 locations next year where students will start their day, one at a middle school and the other, rather than be at a middle school, because of the students that would be impacted in the travel back, the other location will be Holland Hill. So those students and families were notified prior to the April break. And we have not heard any feedback to the contrary from those families as of yet. That may be something they are still deliberating, but we will prepare the busing and transportation to and from Holland Hill and most likely Ludlow Middle School for those students who are participating currently as 4th graders. And we are still having discussions on what could be the possibilities in the future. Lastly, the redistricting. So we are scheduled to be backed up from the original plan, to have the consultants from SLAM to come present. That will not happen in May, unfortunately, but it will happen at the June 13th meeting. We have confirmed that they will have their presentation ready to present to the board and the community regarding the possible scenarios for redistricting. That being said, there may be some additional meetings that would need to be scheduled throughout the summer to stay on target for the dates that were set forth by the board. That being said, so after the presentation on the 13th, we will have 2 weeks before the 27th meeting for any questions to be posed by the board that we can prepare for before the June 27th meeting. It's unfortunate that we had to wait until June, but to make sure that the scenarios were completed and were thoroughly done, the consultants did not feel that rushing it into the May meeting would be productive. We have scheduled some working meetings, Mr. Papa George and I, and also including Rob Mancusian, any discussions to help answer some questions. We did begin our first meeting yesterday. It was a productive meeting, and we have, I believe, 4 or 5 more scheduled before the June meeting to make sure that we can answer any questions and they can get right back to work so that the presentation is completed for the June 13th meeting. Any questions?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Testani, for the update. Committee liaison reports, anyone? Mr. Asa?
Facilities is meeting tomorrow at 2 p.m. We're getting a presentation from the Green Team Initiative. So they're going to be presenting to us, so we're looking forward to that. And we will be continuing the discussion on facility use and rentals. I hope to be able to have something to go to Mr. Peterson and Finance Committee after tomorrow's meeting, knock on wood.
Thank you, Mr. Asa. Mrs. Maxon-Kennelly?
Just very briefly, the policy committee is going to be finally getting back to its work with attempting to cobble together this new grading policy. And I just put the board on alert because based on all of the experiences you've had with children over the years, if there are things that you have in mind that you wish were included, that you wish we would broach and have a conversation about, really good to get that to me soon because we are really trying to put the pedal to the metal and get this done by the end of June so that it could be ready to go for this next school year. And so just wanted to apprise everybody of that. And then secondly is for Parks and Rec. Just 2 quick things. Anyone still looking for Camp Dwight still has openings. And for students, the CIT, the Counselor in Training applications are due May 1st for anyone who doesn't want to see their child who can't yet get a job just sit around. So just a recommendation.
Mr. Peterson?
Yeah, just very briefly, the aforementioned Finance Committee meeting is next Wednesday, the 3rd. And my other obligation, the Standing Special Building Committee, has not met for 2 months, so.
All right. Mrs. Vitale?
Fairfield Cares is having its annual community event on May 17th, 7 to 8:30. It's featuring guest speaker Dr. Ellie Leibowitz, director of the Program for Anxiety Disorders Child Study Center at Yale School of Medicine, and author of several books on childhood anxiety, including Breaking Free of Childhood Anxiety and OCD and Treating Childhood and Adolescent Anxiety. It is a free event. You can register on the Fairfield Cares website. I think that PTAs have been sending this out in their newsletters, so just keep an eye on that. Given all of our discussions and investment in children's mental health, we thought this would be a good resource for parents and for the community. So I hope you register.
Thank you, Mrs. Vitale. Mrs. Ritelli?
SEPTA meets tomorrow night at McKinley, 7:30. Melissa Bildner, an ADHD and executive function parent coach will be speaking. You can join us in person, or you can attend via Zoom. Just go to fairfieldsepta.org and look for the link. Again, 7:30.
Okay. Open board comment. Mrs. Guernsey.
Hi, I just wanted to share, mostly with the public, that I had the opportunity to chaperone the music trip to Disney World as a parent, not as a board member. And I just wanted to add that this is, I mean, I totally appreciate the humor from earlier in the session from our high school update, but just wanted to add that this is a really critical retention and recruitment tool for our music department, and it's an enormous and critical educational program associated with it, both in a performance opportunity and a workshop. So just wanted to make sure that our public understood that. Thank you.
Mrs. Vitale.
As the board knows, and hopefully the public, Fairfield was awarded over $6 million in state funding to fund the HVAC upgrades. So I just want to give a shout out to Mr. Papa George and Mr. Morabito for their work for years, for getting us in the right position to be ready to apply for that. Thank Mr. Asa and Ms. Jacobson, for the capital planning working group. Mr. Asa and I really advocated for that. Thank all town bodies for really getting behind moving that funding forward. It really put us in the prime position for the town showing its commitment to that project. This board, leading the way and getting the funding available for the study. Just everything went. The ducks were all in the row. Everything aligned, and $6 million in funding is coming to Fairfield. So, thank you to really everyone that made it happen. Which the list is long and large, but especially Anderson Sal. And just one question that I've been getting in terms of would this funding speed up the timeline, just putting it out there to you, Ms. Jacobson, in terms of future projects on the waterfall. So something that maybe we could consider in facilities, Nick.
Sorry, Mr. Asa.
No, and I just want to follow up on Mrs. Vitale. It just made me think that next week, I believe it's a potential that the Board of Selectmen may be looking to form the building committee for the air conditioning project, which will be needed. So Mr. Papa George, thanks to Mr. Papa George for pushing that along and working with the First Selectwoman's office. Hopefully we can get that moved along and get it in place, which will get this thing going.
Yes, to your point, well, just really quickly, I mean, we did have estimated reimbursement on there. It's a little bit more than we anticipated, so I think that's where you're going with that.
So, that I shared that we had anticipating, possibly getting a reimbursement. So I didn't foresee it really changing the timeline that much, but I just wanted to put it before the board that it was questioned.
Okay, thank you. All right. Oh, public comment.
Bob Smoller, president of the Fairfield Education Association. I just want to comment on two things. I didn't want to leave the instructional resource conversation without expressing the fact that we do still have a level of nervousness about where that will end up. I want to thank the policy committee for listening to Mick McGarry's thoughts. I thought you did a great job with that. A lot of our concerns relate to how the curriculum documents will come out. Also, our view of what an assured experience is, and this is really a teacher autonomy issue, is, a thematic assured experience. So like freshman year, hero's journey. It's not teach this book. So we hope that when the curriculum documents are finalized and when the board makes their final votes, that level of teacher autonomy, that level of flexibility still exists within the Fairfield Public Schools, so that people can, use some creativity in the way they reach their kids and teach their kids. The other thing I wanted to say is that while we are supportive of an updated grading policy, as you can imagine, teachers have very strong feelings about how grading is handled, and we do hope that as you sort through that policy discussion, that a lot of teacher input is taken into consideration, and also that it's not rushed and that it's done properly, because an improperly handled grading policy could have profound implications for not only our students, but for the amount of time that teachers have to spend doing their jobs. So love the fact that you're interested in addressing the issue. Hope very much so that you'll embrace teacher input in that process. Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Okay. Adjournment. Recommended motion that this meeting of the Board of Education adjourn. Mrs. Vitale, seconded by Mrs. Vitale. All in favor? Yes. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Good night.